everybody. We're going to call this meeting of the School Facility Utilization Task Force to order at 7:01 p.m. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to jump right into item A on our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about the agenda? Or we can take a motion to approve it.
Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion by Mary Beth, second by Sam. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item B on the agenda is communications to the task force. We have not received any since the last meeting, so I don't have anything new to report on that. Moving on to item C, the School Facility Utilization Task Force Chair's Report. The main thing that I just want to remind people of is that we have added 2 public meetings to the schedule. They are Saturday, May 2nd at 1 p.m. and Tuesday, May 19th at 5:30 p.m. These are meant to just be conversations between, sorry?
You say this again a little slower.
Oh, sorry. It's Saturday, May 2nd at 1 p.m. and Tuesday, May 19th at 5:30 p.m. They will be held at Town Hall. They are meant to be dialogues between the community and the task force. So please, for anybody who has been unable to come or people who have things that they want to ask the task force, I believe you should come to that meeting and help us get the word out for those as well. Moving right along to the item D, routine business. The first item there is approval of minutes from March 25th meeting. So I'll take a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve.
Motion by John,
I'll second.
second by Sam. Any discussion on the minutes from the 25th meeting?
There's just one thing that was attributed to me that I think was what Alicia said. On the last page.
Yes, so on the last page, Elizabeth, under item B, discuss proposal to align school facility utilization task force goals. That conversation was initiated by Mary Beth and not Alicia.
No, by Alicia. It says, Alicia. It says, Ms. Greenwood emphasized travel and
Got
busing. That was Alicia.
Okay,
I have to give her credit, you know.
that makes total sense to me. You have that correction? So on the, right after the italics in item B, it says Ms. Greenwood, and that should be attributed to Ms. Carson. Any other comments on the meeting? Or any suggestions that was used? Anybody take
Motion to approve
the motion to approve the minutes as amended?
As amended, yes. Second.
Motion by Mary Beth, second by Stan. All those in favor?
Abstain.
That is unanimous with the exception of Carrie, who was not here.
I wasn't here.
No, Carmen was not here either, so abstentions. Next item under routine business is the check-in on our timeline. We are moving right along. Michelle, do you feel good about the timeline?
Yeah, we're exactly where we said to be, presenting the program and capacity. So yes, we're good.
That is it for routine business. So with that, I'm gonna move on to item E, new business, which will be Michelle from Silver Coast Valley's presentation on programming and capacity in our schools. For those of you who are here or those of you who are online, this lengthy presentation is up on the website. It is 81 slides. So we're gonna share it right now, but if you want to follow along at home, you can download it from the website, which is available from the Board of Ed website. So with that, I'm gonna move out of the way.
Well, thank you. So yes, this is 81 slides. I'm going to try to keep it shorter than it may seem. There's a lot of information here that I thought was important to share with you all. I put a little agenda together, so we're going to explore what programming and capacity really is, just in case anyone doesn't know. And then we're going to assess the 3 schools, and then we'll look at some benchmarking data, proposed standards, and then we'll get into some of the state grants. So programming is, go ahead.
Can you,
Is it working?
can you reshare?
Sure. Sorry, stop sharing. And then reshare.
Yep.
I don't know which one makes sense, but I was going window,
Actually, can you go over to the,
PowerPoint,
yeah, try that.
that might be better. Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So you see that, good?
It's loading. Now we're blind. Yep.
So programming is a detailed design document that sets up your required spaces, their sizes, their functional relationships, and it's really about the educational goals. Typically, you'll see this in a spreadsheet format, but often we color code our floor plans accordingly to the program. And really, it's kind of the architect's most important step. It tells us how the building's to be designed. It's really a blueprint, a roadmap to the design. And it's just really important for your school so that we can get the right components into them for the education. So this is just a sample. This happens to be my elementary school. I love using it. This is the same color coding. Ooh, it looks absolutely terrible up there, but sorry about that. This is a summary sheet to the right here, showing your light blue is your general classrooms, your dark blue is your pre-K, your purple is your special education or your pupil services such as speech, intervention, light purple is your specials, pink your media center, green physical education, your dark green will be a stage, an auditorium. So if you get the idea, it kind of adds up the square footage, and again, this is just a summary sheet. Next sheet is just showing the lower floor plan. When I went to school there wasn't that media center that, oh wow, the colors really don't come out.
It's better on the screen share.
Okay,
So.
well, for everyone on the screen, they can see the colors, I guess, pretty well. But that was added on to, again, bring up this school to kind of today's standards. This is just another sample where you can see a more detailed spreadsheet. This is a K through 8 school. This is just generic, but what you can see here is some of the diagrams to the side to show you all of the classroom structures. A school this big, it needs an auxiliary gym. At the bottom, you can see that another important component about programming is looking at relationships, which spaces need to be next to each other, so it really starts to lay the building out. And this is also when we want to ask you all, are we looking at any other programs to add into your building? Are we going to add special K? Is there going to be a self-contained special ed or any other special ed services? Those are kind of usually the three major questions. Now looking at programming, it's really evolved over the years, and since we're dealing with some older schools, I just kind of wanted to walk through some of that quickly. So this is what schools looked like in the 1940s when Bakerville was built. Kids are in a line, in a classroom, kind of packed in, and it's not really what today is. In the 1950s, things haven't changed much. Your desks, some of those are updated. And then in the 60s, in these pictures, it's showing your typical classrooms, but in the 60s, some schools did change and had the open concept. Luckily, you don't have that here because the schools that do have it, it's typically problematic. So this is a quick little diagram just showing some of the evolution. You know, starting in the 40s, we had these teacher-centered standard cellular classrooms. It did evolve into some open floor concepts. In the 80s, we went back to closed rooms. 90s and 2000s, you know, it's becoming more computer labs and digital. In the 2000s, 2010, it was all about collaboration and creativity and flexible environments, which still holds today. But today, it's even more about personalized and inclusive and wellness. So many of the programmatic things we see or don't see in older schools are small group rooms and breakout rooms, collaboration areas, power and Wi-Fi issues, STEAM maker spaces, counseling and sensory rooms, security vestibules, natural light, modern HVAC, outdoor learning spaces, special ed, and some flexible furniture layouts. Your schools do have some of these, maybe not all of them, but we will kind of run through that. And today, in most of our designs, these are the main things we see requested, is increases in special education and intervention. Intervention is a newer concept in the last 10 plus years, so there's a lot more of that going on. Increased smaller spaces for breakout and group work. Increases in STEAM, STEM, and CTE programs. The CTE is more for high schools. And then again, the changing of the classroom with flexibility, furniture and technology, community use, security, and the last two were added over the last couple of years, HVAC, air quality, and then the teacher space, supporting your teachers and giving them a nice space. So the state of Connecticut does have a grant program, which I'll get into in more detail, but they also do get into programming. And they note that the LEA, the local education agency, is to identify the current and future educational needs. They determine the types of instructional programs that will help for all their goals. So that talks about your core academics, your general education, your special ed, visual arts, music, technology, and physical education. So with that, I did meet with your administrative team to kind of go over the programming. Next, capacity. I know there's been a lot of talk about capacity when the schools were built, how many students did it hold, how many does it hold today, so I really want to go through that with you. But capacity is really about the number of students that the building can hold. And typically we look at that with programming. We need to overlay programming because it's not about packing students in. Certain rooms need to be free, especially in elementary schools. Certain rooms need to be free of students to support, some of the smaller instructionalized spaces. So there's really 3 types of capacity, and I will show you 2 of them today. Your maximum capacity is like the theoretical maximum that you could fit in the building if every classroom was filled with students. Your functional capacity is the same concept, but it does take some of your special education rooms and loads those with students. But your program capacity is how we determine a building's size today. It's how your building can actually serve these students, the delivery of the education. So it takes out the special education rooms and some of those smaller rooms, and we are just loading up your general classrooms to come up with that number. And I'll walk you through that. Again, the state of Connecticut does dictate that it's important to have flexibility and that the LEA should really determine all of that. And we look at grade configuration, school size, class size, and the programs that are available. So really what we do is we need to look at your, yes.
Sorry, because it's going to be referred to just LEA. I know it's
Local education agency.
But who would that be to us?
That would be your superintendent, your
Okay.
administration team,
Our Board of Ed.
principals, your board of ed,
Okay,
yes.
perfect, okay.
Okay, so your enrollment projections do show little growth in the district. So we're not looking at, having to add on to support students in the future, but we are obviously looking for some utilization in this study. So what we really do is determine how many seats your school has by looking at the program, which was an important first step for me to go through the building. Then we needed to look at your size guidelines, which your pre-K is 18, K through 2 is 20, and grades 3 through 6 are 25. So we apply a math formula, but also apply an efficiency factor on that, because working in an elementary school, you might have more kids in grade 2, less in K, so you really need to add this kind of efficiency factor. In elementary schools, we typically use 95%. High schools are done very differently. Middle schools could look at either option. But the chart to the side shows that you really don't want to be under 80% utilized. 80 to 100 is the sweet spot. I love a good 90 because you have a little bit of wiggle room, but not too much. And you really don't want to be at 100%. So the reason it's really important for a program capacity study in a pre-K through 6 schools is because at this age, there is an upsurge of support services at younger ages. If you look at elementary, middle, and high school, your special ed and support services dwindle as they move up. So that support early on is really pivotal and important. They're not optional, they need to be part of your core education. This includes your intervention classes, speech and language, OT, PT, any behavioral support. Special education is more space intensive at younger grades, kind of what I was just implying. The identification rates are higher and they have more frequent services. So having these rooms is very important, even in smaller populations like your pre-K through 2 schools. And then there's scheduling inefficiencies in elementary schools. Unlike high schools, these children are moving together. Specials run on fixed rotations. It allows your teachers to have grade level instruction meetings when those kids are at PE, music, art. So it's important that all those blocks align and that there's some grade level collaboration. Okay, so now we're going to get into Bakerville. This is just a little pie chart that we put together as we evaluate. So there's over 18,000 square feet at Bakerville. And we take your general classroom, special ed, specials, media center, and physical education and put those into the core learning side. And we really like to see that around 50%, so Bakerville isn't far off from that. Then you have your school support, which is your cafeteria, your administration, and then your facility support, which is your circulation and your bathrooms and your HVAC closets and all the other components. So what we did, since we're not going to share overall floor plans, we kind of broke up all of the pieces, and I have that aligned with the spreadsheet. So in Bakerville, you do have 2 kindergarten classrooms and then 4 other general classrooms, and that totals at over 5,000 square feet. I showed 2 examples of the classrooms. There's a variety of sizes. One of them is your smallest and one of them is your largest. They're great classroom sizes, generally speaking. Kindergarten's a little light. We like to see kindergarten around 1,200 square feet, but overall the classrooms are great. So then for special education, you have one larger intervention room, and we did put the scheduling in the notes next to it. I'm gonna have a hard time diving in and reading any of those, but there's 2 staff used daily for intervention. Intervention is used a lot, and I'll get into a little more detail as we move forward. You have a SPED sensory room that's open to a conference room. It's all within the same room. There's no wall there, even though I'm kind of showing the color coding going on there. We have a social worker room and a speech room. The speech room is off of the faculty room, which I'll show a photo of. And then OT, left that there. There is no OT room. They kind of work wherever they can. They leave their tools in the corridor or wherever they can. So,
Michelle?
yes.
Can I interrupt really quickly? I just want to state this and make sure that people online can hear me. Earlier in this process, we talked a little bit about people were asking like how many classrooms were in each school, what they were being used for right now. These slides, this is that data, not in map format. So for anybody who's following on and looking for that, I just want to make sure that I'm tying this back to that so you know where the information is and where it will be available. Okay, thank you.
No problem. So in light purple, you'll see your art, music, health room. It's used 1 day a week for each option, so it's used 3 days a week. So OT, PT uses that room on the days it's not utilized. Then you have your library. It's pretty small. It's basically a classroom, and it's used 1 day a week. Obviously, they would love it to be utilized more, but with staffing that splits around the schools, that's how often someone's available to work there. And then you have your gymnasium, auditorium. It's not really an auditorium, gymnasium, I'm sorry, cafeteria. Obviously, it's used full-size. The colors are gone on that. It's I have it half green, half tan for the cafeteria. Not ideal, not conducive. The size of it is undersized, and then all the equipment around the room really doesn't make it really well for PE. Again, you see it there with the kitchen. The kitchen is also pretty undersized. And then we have all the administration in the terracotta orange color broken up. You see that SPED sensory conference room again. Again, no dedicated conference room that can be closed off is problematic. There's a staff workroom. There is a main office, obviously, and then the principal's office. All these components are broken up throughout the school. Typically, we'd like to see a nice office suite where everything's connected. You know, a conference room, the nurse's office, the principal's office, the main office, a mail room. That would be, you know, your ideal, and school site usually. Lastly, in Bakerville, we have all of your bathrooms and HVAC boiler room, and then all of your corridors that add up to the total of 18,483. These are just some images. To the left, this is we're kind of in the workroom of the staff, and you're looking into their break room, and then you see a door to the right. That's that speech room. So you're kind of moving through 2 different spaces just to get there. In the center, we have the art music room. Again, art and music rooms are usually treated completely different. You want to have acoustical properties in your music room and washable surfaces in your art room. And then there is the multi-purpose room where you see the furniture kind of around the perimeter there. Here's your media center on the left. So it is pretty tight, you know, having the tables in there doesn't create a lot of circulation around. Also today, people are looking for more of media centers, maker spaces, a little more movement and variety throughout the space. And then in the middle, we're kind of in the SPED sensory area, The walls are there for that conference room. The corridor then shows some of the OT kind of in the corner there, I was just trying to show. So now we're gonna look at physical capacity. So this is kind of what I feel like I've heard being asked. It's the only reason I'm addressing it. Normally I wouldn't, because we don't use it. It is not the way to go. So basically what we're doing is taking your 6 full-size classrooms, also your full-size special ed, your full-size art and music, and your media center, since it's a classroom, and adding that into the formula. We multiply that by that 95% factor. So 20 people in 9 classrooms will give you 171 people. That would be the absolute maximum, but it is not recommended in any way, shape, or form, because you will have art on a cart, music on a cart, no media center. It is not recommended at all. And that utilization rate, so taking that utilization, we have 110 students are in your projected enrollment, so that's the number I'm gonna be using. We take that, divided it by 171, and it's a 64%, so obviously low. But now if we look at it like it's being used, actually programmed, 6 classrooms with your 95% factor, tells you that we can have 114 students in this building. So that's a 96% utilization rate with your 110 students. Then we also like to put this chart together just to look at the classroom quantities so we can really hone in on, how many first graders are there, how many second graders are there, how many classrooms do we need, and that number doesn't really change. It's still 6. 6 today, 6 looking 8 years into the future. Now we'll
Can you
yes.
just talk a little bit more about go back on the previous slide in the red box?
Yep.
Can you talk about that, please?
Sure. So we have 110 students, and when I figure out how many classrooms it is, we can't have 1.75 classrooms, so we round up. If you look at second grade, they're at 40, so that's 2 classrooms packed to your maximum class size. So it totals up to 6 classrooms. I will explain this coming up, but existing square footage is 18,483. The state does allow credits for any school buildings predated from 1959. So I took all the square footage, 1959 and younger, or older, I guess you could say, and found out that the state would consider that to be 15,703 instead of the 18,000. So you get a little credit. However, the state size for this many students is 11,898. And we are gonna get into that a little further into the process.
All right, so for the existing at 96 enrollment, it would be 11,898, but projected for 110, it would be 13,776.
Correct.
Okay.
So why did you take the 3 classrooms out of the analysis that got to 96%?
Because it's a media center, an art room, and a special ed room, and they're needed for other purposes.
Those are 3 rooms, right?
Correct.
And you assume that each would need their own?
I don't assume that they do need it. I don't know if I understand exactly.
Well, some of the rooms could possibly be shared, where you have music in the morning or in the afternoon or something along that line.
Well, that is how it already is. So
But taking that away, would you look at it with the 96% range, if I'm understanding this?
yes, because that's typically how we would program. We're not supposed to load a classroom into a media center or into an art room so that those can remain for their purpose. But I feel I've been asked by the community, what is the maximum? And that's your maximum, but it's sacrificially your maximum. You're losing educational programs if you do that. I want to be really clear about that.
We have rooms that are used, a couple days a week or a couple hours a day and things like that. I get the sense that we're taking what is and saying that's what it needs to be, as opposed to looking for options to consolidate.
So really all I'm saying is you have 6 classrooms that are typically used for your general education. There's 1 special ed that is full size. I don't believe it should be taken away from special ed. Special ed does need that, but I'm not the say. I'm no final say here. I'm just reporting. A school typically has more than one special ed, and it should have one full-size special ed. In a school of 98 students, sure, it's not perfectly utilized, but it doesn't negate the need for it. So all I'm saying, I just wanted to answer the question because I've heard it asked. If you took those 3 classrooms and used them, you could hold 171 students, but it is not recommended.
Because that would be sticking students in every single room.
Exactly. It's getting rid of your
Which
special
the
ed
students are
classroom,
there full time.
getting
so
rid of
where
art
they
and
go in
music,
the art.
getting rid of
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
It is not recommended. I tried to make that clear.
And then Ben, on, maybe we can have page numbers for a future.
Sure.
Yeah, on the slide right here, Bakersfield School existing program, like in music, art, health, it shows right here, utilize 3 days or 1 per week for each of those. And the media center is, so library throughout the week. The librarian's only there 1 day a week, but there's other reasons, other ways you could use that room, or it is used during the other days. So there are some notes that help us understand what's happening when and where.
Exactly. And that media center, I believe, is used for conferences when the conference room can't be used. OTPT uses it, intervention uses it when more classes are needed. Ready? Okay, so New Hartford. So we have 23,405 square feet. The core learning is at 52%, school support's at 15%. We have a little central office component in there at 1%, it's a small room, and then facility support is at 33%. So looking at the spreadsheet, now we have pre-K in the mix. Your pre-K classrooms are 983 square feet to 818. Again, just like kindergarten, we typically do see these at 1,200 square feet. There's a lot of movement and kind of stations set up in these kids' classrooms, and they need a little bit more space than your typical. Your typical classrooms are usually 800 to 900, so again, this school really hits the mark with the general classrooms. And then looking at special ed, we have 1 full-size special ed classroom. It's used full-time, 1 to 2 staff at a time with multiple groups. We have a school psych office, which is connected to the conference room. So again, really not ideal. It can be problematic. Each one has to leave if the other one has to be utilized. We have a small intervention room, which is really, it's small and it's off the media center. It was the media center office that was converted. You have a sensory room that's used a lot. There's a secondary sensory room, used a little bit less because it's a lot smaller at 108 square feet. It actually used to be the closet for some of the supplies. You have a speech room at 189 square feet and a speech office at 137. They are connected. And then you have an OT room, you don't have an OT room again at this school. So they are again using open space wherever they can find it. Again, we have a shared music, art, health room, used 3 days a week. A media center, this media center is a little bigger. You can feel that when you're there. It functions a little more. Again, used 1 day a week. Because the same person is 3 days here and 1 day at the other schools. And then we have another shared CAF gymnasium. The gym is a fair size, it's pretty in the mark for an elementary school. However, with all the tables around, it doesn't really work as well for some PE classes. Food service, again, sharing the use with the gymnasium, and the kitchen is also undersized. The servery is really small. Kids are kind of flowing out into the hallway as they get in line. Administration, you have a principal's office that is remote from the main office, just like at Bakerville. The nurse, which I don't think I mentioned in the last one, but both nurse stations are really undersized, a little too small. You have a small staff room, no sink, you have a work room. Main office is a little bit small, and then the conference room, which is shared. There's a storage room listed, and that's in the pink color. That is strictly storage for central office files that they don't have room for, often used as like a teleporting office when someone needs it. And then lastly, we have the infrastructure, which is your bathrooms and your storage and your IT. And then we have corridors. Oops, I'm sorry. I lost my square foot total on here, but we're at roughly 23,000. Some images here, there were students in the building, so my pictures aren't as good as Bakerville. But again, we're looking at that wall to the left that's separating the two rooms. You know, it works, but sound-wise it does not. Then we have an art music room. This room I noticed looked like it was split up more, kind of like a music side at the rug and an art side on the other half. This is one of the sensory rooms to the right, a little too small with the storage around. And then this is a larger sensory, your special ed room. It's the larger room, but you can see that they set up multiple stations that are used for different things there. And then
Can you stop at that room? What room is that one?
this one, it's
Yeah.
the one full-size special ed room. I'd have to go back and tell you, it's room 1.
Okay.
Remember we were.
Yeah, no, I remember being in it. I
So
wanted
that's
to
just
know
some
which
of the
one that was.
separating walls, kind of setting up those areas. And then another picture of the gymnasium, just showing again the furniture around the perimeter. So now, if we look at the maximum, again, physical capacity, taking away that one special ed room that serves multiple purposes, taking away your art, your music, and your media center, you can load up 10 classrooms and you would have 184 students in the building. And with 98 students in the building, that's a 53%. Again, this is not recommended. We're adding those 3 classrooms into the mix to show you that. What we do recommend is program capacity, where we're just looking at your 7 full-size classrooms and loading them with your students and the efficiency factor. That would give you a max of 127 students. With 98 in the building, that's at 77% utilized. So a little light. So here's your classroom chart. Again, the classroom needs aren't changing too much. We might end up losing 1 classroom. So we can, utilize that for something else. But again, that's where we're at. All right, Antolini. Antolini's 58,177. We have core learning at 47%. And we have school support at 16%. We have central office is using 3% of the building. The Oak Hill rooms, which aren't being utilized right now, are 4%. So if you see, we do add that to core learning, we're at that 50% mark. And then your facility support is 30%. So we have a lot more classrooms here. Again, all of them great sizes, high 800s to 900s, all working well. We have more special ed here. So we have 1 large special ed used 5 days a week, and there's lots of storage in there, and that's the same as your classroom 10, so 9 and 10 are full-size special ed, and they're arranged so that they're serving certain grade levels. They're clustered around certain grades. We have an intervention room. It's used daily, and it's also the after-school BASES program, which needs to remain in a room that's not a general classroom, so that when they come in, they're not interrupting a classroom. We have another special ed room, full size, used 5 days a week with multiple groups, 2 to 3 at a time. We have another intervention room, which is shared with your book storage. That's the school resources for the staff. All the books in the school are held there. We have a speech room at 456 square feet, used 3 days a week. We have an intervention room, which is pretty small off of the media center over here. It is too small and the glass is a security concern. We have an OT room at this school nearby. It's used 3 to 4 days a week. It's a little too small, so they do move out of the room often. We have another special ed room, used 5 days a week. Again, a little too small. It fits only 3 to 4 at the most. We have an outpatient counselor, which is over here too, a little small. We have school psych and a social worker, which are down the hall. They're used 4 and 5 days a week. And they also have an area for a conference table, and there's a sensory area in the school site. And then we have the regular school counselor, which is a good size. So that's special ed. And then we have the specials. We have a health room, a music room, an art room, and an instrumental room. We have a media center. This is a good size media center. We do like to see them over 2,000 square feet. So this room, there's a makerspace area. There's a lot in here that you can do. so it's nicely sized. Gymnasium, so again, we're splitting that with the cafeteria there. The gymnasium area to the left, those are all the old locker rooms that are not renovated. They're just being used for storage and kind of an office space for PE. Then we have the auditorium. That's at 2,500 square feet roughly. Stage is 455 square feet. And then food service, we're just looking at the gym again, essentially, but also with the servery and storage and kind of receiving area off the back there. Administration, so you do have a little more of a suite here where you have the main office, the principal and the nurse clustered together. There's also a work break room, it's kind of across the hall. Then we have our book storage and our supply room located throughout. So then we're looking at the, what we call specialized programs, which is the district curriculum coach. District IT has 2 different people have an office. And then, so the subtotal for central office is just under 1,500 square feet. And then Oak Hill has a variety of rooms that total 2,541 square feet. Then we have all of the infrastructure, your laboratories, your boiler rooms, your storage and IT. Then also your circulation, which brings your building to 58,177. Here's some classrooms. This is 2 special ed or intervention rooms, just kind of showing the one to the left has a lot more space. There's a lot more sensory involved in that room. And then the one to the right is just a table in the middle and not much else can be done except small group work there. Just showing the auditorium. I know it was considered a multi-purpose space, but there's not much else it can do but be an auditorium with a tiered floor. It doesn't work as well. And then your gymnasium, again, with all the tables built into the side, you can't really have the wall padding and some of the gymnasium aspects we'd like to see. So now if we start to look at the maximum physical capacity, we're looking at the 13 classrooms, and then we're pulling an additional 9 full-size classrooms from special ed and from the specials. And then also 2 full-size from Oak Hill classrooms. So totaling at 22 classrooms, you would be able to fit 523 students in the building. With 250, that's a 48% utilization rate. Again, not recommended practice in any way. So if we just look at the 13 full-size classrooms, that's 309 students is what the building would hold. The current enrollment is 250, so that's an 81% utilization rate. But I did want to look at that again, pulling maybe the 2 full-sized Oak Hill classrooms in. That would be 356 students that this building would hold and utilize at 70%. So looking at the classrooms today, we have about 13. Looking at the way it could map out with only 1 less student, it's just the way the grade structures go, we could probably get away with 12 classrooms to support them. So this is just a little kind of summary side-by-side comparison, just showing the differences, how space is used throughout each building. The second side, so again, both Bakerville and New Hartford will have an adjusted square footage based on the Office of Grants Administration's formula. So they kind of reduce the square footage there, but their allowable standards are much less than even that. So that affects your reimbursement rate, which we'll get into shortly. And it's just kind of showing you the difference and all the enrollment and laying that out for you. So here's what we noted as the district deficiencies. So not all programs, special ed in general, you have about 25% of the population needs special ed at the schools. And not all programs have rooms, or the rooms are shared and not as conductive use. There's definitely less efficiency in Bakerville and New Hartford, but the needs do remain.
Can you repeat that? You said 25%?
25% is what I was told the district special ed is.
That's the percentage of the student population that
Need special ed services. So intervention rooms support the general education population, and those are reevaluated on 6 to 8 week periods, depending on learning needs for each student. They are highly used, space is needed. Art, music, and health, it's A health room could be any room, that could be a general classroom, but art and music are specialized rooms and not as conductive with their delivery shared. Ideally, you'd have a separate cafeteria with a full-size gym. It limits scheduling problems, furniture interferes with proper PE class, and the kitchens and serveries are undersized. The nurses' suites at Bakerville and New Hartford are small, there's no privacy. The main office suites also at Bakerville and New Hartford are a little bit remote and broken up, and there's no dedicated conference rooms. Staff is traveling from all of your buildings around, and that's, limiting their teaching and service time. Central office is also broken up throughout the district, which is a little bit fractured, and I think if they were all together, it would be helpful. And just HVAC, again, ventilation isn't meeting code requirements.
Question for you,
Sure.
25% of the district has some kind of special education needs. Does that sound typical to you? Do you have a sense of what's average or whatever?
I think that's fairly typical. I don't really get into that all too much, but everything I'm hearing from your administration is very typical to what I hear in any other
From this
district.
area, but I'm just wondering for other schools.
Yeah, no, it seems pretty typical. I haven't heard the
I can-
percentage exactly.
I can weigh in on that. We talked about this at some of the Board of Ed meetings, and benchmarked against the state, and so we're pretty much like, we might be like 1 percentage point higher than like the state average, but like we're pretty in line with what is common across the state.
Yeah.
And as they've explained to me too, Ben, it's a variety of needs. You'll have high needs, you might have some smaller needs, but they're still considered a special need.
It also ties to getting the circle, the IEPs and the 504s. So there's state required educational programming. So there's a whole bunch of restrictions, and also students really evaluate their progress and their ongoing needs. And so there's state requirements in terms of what we need to actually fulfill for this 25% of students.
Not just state, federal, too.
Yeah, that's it, but yeah, there's actual requirements there.
I want you to finish, then I'll come back.
Okay, there's questions out there. No, keep going.
You want to take a pause?
No, I don't know. I see hands being raised. I didn't know what I should do.
I was thinking we would get through the rest of your presentation and then ask questions. That's the next item on the agenda, so if it's okay with that.
So now we're gonna look at benchmarking, which is really important to compare to other districts, to typical space sizes. And really, the goal is to just verify if the facility can support the educational model the district wants to deliver. So typically, as architects, we have a layered approach. We really, work with each district over programming, but we also refer to the state standards and guidelines that have been set up. There's school safety infrastructure. Obviously, we have code requirements, but we also are benchmarking other projects. And then we have a lot of state grant information and a lot of resources we look at, and that's just a snippet of that. So here is a chart we put together that hones in on the typical sizes you would see and just kind of where New Hartford kind of hits. So like pre-K, like I said, is around 1,200. New Hartford, is over 300 under that. So we're just kind of honing in on that. Kindergarten classrooms are also undersized. Your classrooms are great. They all fall within the 800 to 900 range. Your media centers, the state has a funny formula for these, which we kind of disagree with, but it's taking like 35 square feet per student, but only 10% of the population. So technically, the sizes you guys have at New Hartford and Bakerville meet that. But typically in design practice, we like to design over 2,000 square feet to really get all the components in a typical modern day media center. Gymnasiums, typically in elementary school would have anywhere from 2,500 to 4,700. A court size is 47 by 42, and then you want like 8 feet around that if you really wanted to get that court size in. So Antolini is the only one that does hit that mark. New Hartford isn't. New Hartford also fits within that range. The art rooms are a bit undersized. Antolini's closer, so we gave it just a warning. Music, those are again undersized. We don't have any STEM or CTE. The CAFs all fit to support the population that we need. The stages, they typically would see about 900. We like to keep it under 1,000 square feet. But the Antolini one is around 500 square feet. And then health clinics, because we do notice the small size at the two schools. Typically, you want to see around 350, and Bakerville and New Hartford are undersized. The state does get into a lot of, they provide a lot of information and give you space plates and how these classrooms should look. I mean, I absolutely love this model of two classrooms next to each other with this shared room, but their space standards never allow this, so it's kind of focused, but you know. Now we're gonna look at DRGs, the district reference groups. So this is basically where they cluster towns together in certain categories based on income, education, occupation, family structure, poverty, language, and district enrollment. This was done in 2006, so 20 years later, I don't know how accurate it is, but New Hartford is Group C. So just as we go into the next slide, I just kind of wanted to put that information out there. So this is a benchmarking looking at school configurations and sizes similar to New Hartford. So New Hartford is here at 120th largest town in Connecticut. And then we're looking at the top 10 above you and the 10 under you. The ones I grayed out are regional schools and kind of, don't compare in that sense since they're loading up with other towns. So anyway, this data is 6,710 population, and you have 2 pre-K2s. So looking at the other districts, many do not have, no one has two pre-K2 schools around your size. Also, you will see that many of them have pre-K through 6, pre-K through 8, pre-K through 6. East Granby does have 1 pre-K through 2 at 195 population, with a 3 through 5 at 179 population, which is pretty comparable to your size, your district there. Essex also has a similar, I have a pre-K 6 at 300 people in 1 school, but they also are part of the regional district, although their elementary school is just for Essex. So just looking at other districts, you see that everyone does have pre-K, and there's some striking range, but none of these districts have 3 schools, just for comparison. This is some more of the state data that we'll start to get into, but they also give square footage per student. If you look on the size, there's ranges for elementary schools, 104 to 125, and we'll get into this a little more. Also noting New Hartford's reimbursement rate is 45.71.
Is that for the town?
That's for the town.
Okay.
So also the state really does even get into program benchmarking with typical designs. They talk about how schools could be laid out and the variety that there are. But in Connecticut, the average enrollment of a public elementary school is 380 to 430 students. So I guess the National Center of Education has 384, but other data shows around 427. So the typical range for most of Connecticut elementary schools are 300 to 600 students. Your small rural schools are 200 to 350, and your typical suburban is 350 to 500. But the most common planning assumption is a school of 400 to 450, which typically is around 60,000 to 85,000. So just kind of wanted to put that out there as we start to evaluate other options and look for efficiencies throughout the district. So now, throughout my meetings with your administration, we really wanted to define what does New Hartford need to support its students. When we meet next, I'm gonna be presenting different configurations that we can look at, and I'm gonna have to build a program for each configuration we look at so we can look at what size each one is. I know that's where it gets fun. So we really wanted to hone in on program standards with the administration. No matter what size the school is, what do we really need, and kind of get into that. So we put this spreadsheet together. So no matter what, the district would really like to maintain 3 pre-K classrooms. If we're gonna look at reconfiguring, maybe we can get some bigger classrooms at 1,200 square feet. Otherwise, we're gonna work with what we have, essentially, if they remain where they are. General classrooms, we want to provide grade level classrooms appropriately in line with the class size standards. So that's, bare minimum, obviously. Then we really had to focus on that special ed component because it's different at each school. So what is the ideal? And we set up the ideal. So ideally, there would be 2 full-size resource rooms per building. So that's 800 square feet. That would be ideal. Ideally, we'd have 2 speech rooms per building. One BCBA, which is a behavioral kind of office for students, 1 per building. An OTPT room, 1 full size per building. A sensory room at 400 square feet per building. A quiet room, which is a lower sensory calming room, at half that size at 200 square feet.
What's the difference between a quiet room and a behavioral room?
A behavioral room is what they're usually working with someone, and a quiet room, you don't want a lot in the room. It's kind of for outbursts and from the way I understand it. Again, I'm not an educator. I'm a messenger.
Okay.
Intervention, ideally there would be 1 per grade to really support the students. So there's 4 per school configuration. There would be 1 instructional leader room at 600 square feet. A life skills room. This is actually to bring kids back in district that are outplaced. Ideally, there would be 1, probably at Antolini, 1 location in order for it to work. They can have a max of 8 students, but there's 4 students in mind that the district could bring back and save cost from sending them out.
So currently, we have 8 out now, but we could potentially bring 4 back, is that what you just said?
8 would be the maximum per class that 1 person can handle in 1 classroom.
Okay,
That would be the maximum size, so you could bring kids from out of district in. Places do that,
okay.
but right now I think there's 4 students out there that could come back. That's the way I understood it.
Okay.
Then we want to have a school psych, a school counselor, and a social worker at 400 square feet, so it's office size and workable with students in groups.
That's for each school building.
For each school building minus the life skills, yes. So I tried to know like per grade, intervention I think was the only 1 per grade, but I totaled it at 4, because right now that's how it is.
One thing I want to mention with the life skills and related to the outplaced students is that it would bring back, my understanding right now, and we should validate this with what we have going on, but it could bring students back, but I don't think it will bring all of them that are outplaced right now back. But having a life skills component would reduce our need to outplace the students that commonly get outplaced, is my understanding of the conversation. It's a good kind of like catch-all, where like, again, we're not gonna be able to service 100% of kids, but for the vast majority of kids that we send out of district, we'd be able to keep them in district by having a life skills component in the school.
With a teacher,
So
with instructors.
Right,
And we currently don't have any, right? That's the.
We don't, correct.
To make sure.
are these the standards you're gonna be building into your recommendations?
That would be it, yes.
So are we gonna add on to all 3 schools to do this, or what?
That's what we're gonna explore.
I don't think so.
Specials, ideally there'd be 1 art, 1 general music, 2 for your 5th through 6th grade to support band and instrumental, and then 1 health room. The media center appropriately sized, we kind of put a 2,000 plus or minus. Auditorium, we don't really need an auditorium today. Most elementary schools, well, first of all, the state won't pay for one, number 1. Most elementary schools just have a platform within the cafeteria or the gymnasium. I think when we were discussing this, cafeteria was preferred.
What do you mean a platform?
A platform is just a low stage.
Just a.
It's a stage. It's just
Would it be movable?
not typically, but it could. We could plan for that.
So
but
like
usually-
risers?
Yeah, usually it's just like a
something like
ramp up to it, and it's not your old school 3-foot high stage. It's 18 inches high maybe. But it's just a typical elementary school component. Food service, just ideally we'd have a separate cafeteria from the gymnasium. Administration, ideal would be an office suite with a main office, principal, school psych, nurse, and conference room. Minimally, they need dedicated conference rooms near the front entrance. Expand the nurse at Bakerville and New Hartford. Improve break rooms for staff, and curriculum and supply storage. And then central office, ideally they'd be grouped together in 1 location, and they would also have a dedicated conference room and break room and more storage. So that's just a component we can layer into this conversation.
Well, I'm looking for you to be very creative with your Jenga moves,
Okay.
okay? Because there's a lot of the stuff that I would not be in favor of putting before the townspeople to vote on, because I don't think that that would be in the best interest for the town, and I'm just saying
It
that right
seems
now.
like we're taking us up the elevator
Yeah.
and building, I guess, utopia. And
This-
we don't have utopia now, and we're trying to consolidate it, looking at possibility of consolidating.
I see a little contradiction where we're underutilized, and as we get further into it with the reimbursement, we're gonna get a really low reimbursement rate because we're underutilizing our space, but now we need more space. And I don't know how that works.
It just seems to me we're building,
This is common.
if you accept these, you look at the options, the options have this stuff in it, I'm gonna have a hard time with the options. I can see it already.
I have a question,
Sure.
just for clarity. Central office, that's superintendent, admin, curriculum.
There's three,
Student
I think,
services.
3 offices, some storage.
We would not have them?
Superintendent's office is at town hall.
Right, but would that be considered central office or no?
I think
That's what I'm considering central office, yes. Along with the other components throughout district IT, the curriculum office.
So instead of having like the 2 IT people over here, curriculum, you just literally have them all together? Okay.
Typically, in conversations like this, we look at utilization of even them included. A lot of times in small districts like this, they are included within the school. I'm not saying that's what we need to do here, I just want it all on the table, is all I'm saying.
Thank you.
It's a possibility, maybe.
So I just wanted to make one comment about what you said, Ben. I completely appreciate what you're saying. I think there's some value though in starting with the ideals or what you want to work toward. It's easier to cut back than to eventually add in later on. But this is like the best of what we would absolutely want, but we all know we don't always get that.
We'd have all our roads paved if we could do that.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that it's good to start with what can we, what's the best, what would we want to have, and then work around it and make things work from there. You know,
And that's typically how these go.
Right.
And they're often chiseled away as we get to reality.
Right.
It's what happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to know what each school should have in an ideal world too, because if there is a thought process of, okay, let's have an ideal world, I'm not saying I want an ideal world, we all want ideal worlds and roads, but to have that ideal world maybe is taking the fact that 2 schools fall, even with the programming guidelines, under max capacity. So maybe this is a way to look at how to best utilize all spaces. I'm not saying consolidation, but as maybe let the town know what we're missing in an ideal world. Maybe there's a way to have it with a smaller footprint. Because the ideal world's tough times 3. Because I look at this and I'm also thinking, okay, so now we have a library, full-size library with what, 1 teacher, still 1 day a week. That's kind of silly. So then it starts to lead to, okay, we now need to staff all these
At
rooms.
2 schools.
Right.
Yes, yeah, well,
That's
times
gonna be
3 of
built into it.
everything is looking at this, like, okay, now we need 3 library teachers, now we need 3, that's for teeny time. So I agree, it's good to look at what ideal is.
Yes. I'd also be interested in, if people are agreeable, is where is room for expansion at a school if we close a school? So if we close a school, where's the room for expansion at the other 2 schools?
And that's definitely the next
To
step.
create back to the ideal,
Yes.
that's,
And I think both schools are a challenge, my initially.
Probably all 3 schools are a challenge.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Okay. Now into the cost. Ooh. That's weird. Okay, so just, this is a good segue into grants. So the state of Connecticut has a school construction program. It's changed its name over the years. It's been evolving and changing a lot. But they have a program that gives towns reimbursement, and I'm just gonna walk you through some of the basics of that. So through Department of Administrative Services, Office of Grants Administration, known as OGA now, could change tomorrow, but we'll call it that today. They offer, so New Hartford has the reimbursement rate of 45.71, but for new construction, it's reduced to 40%, and I'll show you a slide on this later and give my speech about that in a minute. But there's basically two kind of paths you can take, priority projects and non-priority projects. The naming of them is a bit funny, but priority projects only happen once a year, and those are for your major projects. Alterations, which are renovations to a certain area, major renovation, which they typically call renovate as new, which is doing the entire building, upgrading it, new construction. So that's a yearly application that you have to apply by June 30th. And then by December 15th, the DAS submits this list to the governor and education committee for review. There's also non-priority projects, which again, the name is a little funny because it's not a priority, but they're open monthly. You can apply for these the 1st through the 10th, and those are for projects which luckily now is HVAC, that's newer in the last couple years. Code violations, security projects, roofs, they now allow insulation in walls and attics, elevators, windows, photovoltaics, all sorts of stuff like that. There's a lot of, on the side, I'm just trying to show some incentives. There are some incentives for like pre-K and for some special ed. And then there's a lot of things that are ineligible costs. Typically, as we do these studies, we don't get into that too much, but the reimbursement rates could get little hits on certain things. Like for instance, an auditorium, they don't allow it in elementary school anyway, but they kind of hit you on the number of seats that they would. Same with bleachers, little things like that. This next slide just shows you some of their acronyms and all the different types of projects that they have. But even just recently, as of last July, there's some new incentives. Again, 15% for bonuses for some more special education programs. So something about that, the life skills room that we were talking about could get additional reimbursement with that. It's quite a process to apply for these grants, especially the priority projects. You need your legislative body must authorize the local board of education through the superintendent to apply. Regional boards have a separate method. The municipalities need to secure a funding authorization for the local share of the costs effective under the law, and then they also need to prepare a referendum or whatever it is that your town requires. I know it's different in some towns, which you need to submit those results by November 15th. To get into that. Okay, you also need to have a whole school building committee that's established with someone with experience in the construction industry and Board of Ed members.
I have a question.
Sure.
The reimbursement rates, because we have those two different ones, so I know there's the new construction one. Would you consider, and I know the priority, so that has new construction literally in it, so that would be like your 40% reimbursement rates for those types of projects typically?
Yes, so new construction is downgraded to 40%.
Okay, and renovate is new would typically be like
The 47.
Okay, that would be the 45?
The 45.71, yeah.
Really?
Yes, well, with a caveat about the space standards that I'll get into in a little bit.
Okay, and then those other ones would be like HVAC, code violations, those things, the
Yes.
45. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so application process, you have to submit educational specifications. That's a little bit of the programming we're doing, but in a lot more detail. Sometimes we're hired to help with those, sometimes districts do it on their own, but they have to submit that along with their resolutions from their building committee to be eligible. So just a little more information on that. So this is a list of all the priority projects over the last 3 years. Each year it seems to be getting a little smaller and smaller, which shows kind of the times we're in. But we kind of categorize that and look at new construction, which are in blue, and the renovate is new, which are in green. And it gives you an average cost per square foot. So the average cost for new construction over the last 3 years is just under $950. So we typically, when planning these projects for anything new, we're gonna plan $1,000 a square foot. For renovation, the average is coming out to 827, and I'll admit, these can have a much bigger range. You could be reconfiguring major parts of your school and it's gonna be more. You could not be moving walls and it will be less, but working in existing buildings, there's all sorts of things you're gonna come across. So we are tracking that at about $850 a square foot. So just as we move forward into these kind of scenarios, those are the numbers I'm using.
What are the whites?
The whites just didn't really, didn't relate as well, based on what I read about them. So I didn't include them into these averages.
Okay.
So now we'll look at New Hartford's reimbursement. So this is the spreadsheet that they have, it's pages long with every town. So New Hartford, back in 2020 was at 48.9, and it was getting higher for a while and then started to come down. The crazy thing, the whole time I've been doing this for the last 13 years, new construction has always been 10% of a difference. If you look at, I know you probably can't read it well there, but every town has a different rate. It has nothing to do with a straight 10% anymore. I don't know what the method is, but 45.71 down to 40. Typically, I would see that at 35.71. And I think early on I mentioned how we would explore new construction, whether you guys wanted to or not. I have to prove a renovation number makes more sense than a new construction number. So it's just kind of a math formula you have to prove to the state that you're doing the most fiscally responsible thing. This is the newer spreadsheet that they have for space standards. So I kind of plugged in all your schools into these, but I'm kind of zooming in on the few purple projected enrollment, allowable square footage per pupil. So we're probably in the 0 to 350 student population unless we're looking at one large school. So it kind of shows you the square footage you would get per student. But now we can look at each school specifically. So Bakerville, so we're looking at the reimbursement rate here. So at the top, you'll see my number 7, that's just a snippet of that spreadsheet. The allowable space standards for Bakerville, is 13,776. Your school is more, so it reduces your reimbursement by 87, you're gonna get 87.73% of that. So if you look at the bottom, you're gonna get 40.10% instead of the 45.71. And in new construction, you would get 35.09. And that's if we're working with 110 students in the building, which is what the projections are saying. So as we look at different configurations, those numbers are gonna change. So just like I have to do a program, I have to evaluate it each scenario, because it will change, and that's what's gonna change the numbers a bit in each option and help you guys evaluate it from a financial aspect.
So when we submit an application, do we have to do existing at the time of the application?
We use the highest of the 8-year projections, which is why I followed our projections. I needed those numbers to plug in. So, yeah. So New Hartford. New Hartford tells you that your allowable space standards is 12,271, and the adjusted actual is 19,527. So that's 62.85% of your reimbursement you would get, which then adjusts your reimbursement rate to 28.73. So I think that's part of the reason you guys didn't do the roof project. However, I will tell you that we do roof projects a lot, and they usually don't hit you with that on roof projects. They'll give you your full reimbursement rate. But I understand you don't know what you're gonna do with school.
Do you trust the state?
I'm on a public meeting, yes, I do.
I'm in a public meeting, I don't trust the state.
Okay. Antolini. So looking at Antolini, your allowable square footage here is 35,209. So this one gets hit, your reimbursement would become 27.66%. New construction, 24.21%. So with that, I know this was a lot of information, but this programming effort does does more than define spaces. It clarifies educational priorities and translates your vision for teaching and learning into a purposeful, student-centered framework. It ensures each space supports your curriculum and the needs of students and staff. But with this foundation, we can now move confidently into the next phase, which will align options with your priorities, budget, and site to shape a solution that advances your mission. Basically what I'm saying. So next presentation, I will go into the site. Let's look at what's going on with them, where we could possibly add, and then talk about some initial concepts of what we could do.
Okay, here's some questions or thoughts I've had. I don't know if you saw this, Mary Beth, CCM just had a webinar on energy performance contracts,
I did not go to the webinar.
but did you see it? You saw that it was there. So, you know, there's been towns and school districts who have used these companies, Energia, Amoresco, I think it is, and they're using energy performance contracts to finance HVAC equipment and things like that. So they'll guarantee you, of course, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But if it works, they'll guarantee you a certain amount of savings, and you use your future savings, guaranteed savings, to pay for the outflow, the capital outflow, with no money up front. It's not something that you'd have to have the town approved funding on, because you're just gonna be paying it with your future savings. Are you aware of those energy performance contracts?
I have seen something like that in another district, and I know they were trying to double dip basically into the state funds, and that wasn't allowed. And I don't know specifically, but I can look into it if you're asking me. Yeah, I can look into
Okay, I
that.
didn't know if you had any experience with that.
I can't think of the name of the company too with that town, but it wasn't what he said, it was a different name.
Oh, with Cheshire?
No, it was a different town.
Oh, a different town. So they've got, towns are Energy Partners, are Waterbury, Seymour, and these do sound larger larger towns. Southington, correct, Guilford, East Haven, Derby, Branford, Monroe, Thomaston. I can send you the link.
Yeah, I think that does.
Yeah. Just wondering if that would be something beneficial for us to consider, seeing that a lot of the construction costs were revolving around all the HVAC stuff, first of all. So that is, I'm sure, a concern for all of us, is what, not only today, if we can't afford all of it today, we're gonna have to do it within 10 years, right? There's something's gonna happen with some of this stuff. It needs to be addressed. And along with figuring out what we should do, one of my questions was, bringing back outplaced students, what kind of square footage, what kind of rooms do they need? What kind of savings would we achieve given our current, the number that we would bring back? What would our savings be? I would like to know this, and I know you're probably not gonna be able to tell us this, maybe it's something that we need to get from central office, is I wanna know what the full cost of the pre-K program is for the non-mandated students, because our revenue is only $70,000 for pre-K. So we have, roughly 30 students of non-mandated pre-K. So that's gonna be 2 teachers, roughly, and we're only getting $70,000 revenue. So I think that's something we need to consider that, right? I'm just saying, does it make sense? Are we priced appropriately? And we still need to know if we're gonna stay at Bakerville.
I actually asked a couple questions on that front, and I don't have all the answers, but one important part that I learned about that is that there are state requirements in terms of the ratios.
I know, 50-50.
Well, there's some other ratios and requirements as well, so, it's interesting as you look at some of that math, and I'm just kind of making sure that whoever does look at this that is aware, there are some requirements in terms of the number of students in a classroom, so you vary with the students we do have to deliver 16, you very quickly get to multiple classrooms, and then you can actually, it's more cost effective to have the other students there, and so it's almost counterintuitive until you get into the numbers, and so whoever does look at that, there's some pieces that don't make sense kind of at first glance that actually make math work out better than you will think it will, so.
Well, I mean, you have the teachers and you have support staff too, right? So to me, it doesn't sound like $70,000 is the correct amount that we should be receiving as revenue, but I understand that's a Board of Ed question and not really a question here.
Yeah, that is, we need to get that input.
Because I know, because we gotta look at the classrooms, right? Can we use a classroom for something which is part of our, look-see.
Understand, we can have them weigh in on the numbers and talk about what the program looks like.
And the Bakerville portable classrooms, if we end up staying in Bakerville, we really need to understand what's the life expectancy of those, because we don't want to put money into that school that we're stuck there for 20 years and the classrooms are going to fail in 10 years and we didn't address it. Right? And then if we take second grade up here, what would that look like for a lunch wave?
In June.
In specials, yeah.
Any
Yeah,
other
those
questions or
ones are-
comments from the task force on the presentation before I open it up to the folks in the room?
I don't know if this would apply, like this, it's kind of off of what Alicia said with the portables. If, and this may be something for you to answer, not now, but for next time. If we were to do something like that for the portables as an example, just because it's a very realistic one. If we were to do anything like these and have grant reimbursement, is there a timeline where it has to be maintained as such for 10 years or something? I know different grants be like, yeah, you can get that reimbursement, but then it needs to stay that way for the next
It's 20
X
years,
Yeah.
so we couldn't certify those portables for 20 years,
Okay.
to answer that, yeah.
Because
So anything-
that was addressed in the building of a lot of those portables.
I did add a little something onto that, because you had asked the question during the meeting, so in the revised report, I did add something. And I had planned on incorporating demolition and an addition based on that in the new. So we'll get into that further.
Thank you.
Anything else from the task force right now before I open it up for public comment while Michelle's still here? Open up to public comment. Anybody like to ask questions about tonight's presentation? Come on up. Please come, can you approach so that we can,
Big circle.
the owl can catch you?
Well, no, nothing there, but right there, yeah. Then they can all hear you all the way.
My name is Shelley Lloyd, 29 Pioneer Drive, New Hartford, Connecticut, and I have 5 things I'd like to ask. I'd like to piggyback on the modular situation. 4 of the 6 classrooms that you referenced in your presentation are those modular classrooms. So, I think that needs to be very much in our forethought when we're doing planning. You mentioned that the cafeterias in Hartford Elementary and Bakerville were adequate size, but does that include them being multi-use for also being a cafetorium, basically, or, cafeteria and gym?
Well, not as a gym, no. Bakerville doesn't hit the mark as a gym. New Hartford does, technically.
But I'm talking about the cafeterias, with all the junk on the side, I mean, is that,
Well, yeah, the cafeteria can support the space needs for serving the population they're serving, yes.
okay. You mentioned, and maybe I misinterpreted you, but I thought you said you needed 2 speech rooms in each building. Did I not hear that correctly?
I think
Can
you
you just
did.
check that?
I think you did hear that correctly. I'm gonna have to double check.
That's input from the administration if that's what she's saying.
So speech 2.
Okay, I'm a speech language pathologist. I also worked in this district as a long-term sub for a period of time. I also think that you mentioned that Angelini the speech therapy room was only used 3 days a week. I don't know why you would need two if the only one was used 3 days a week. Harvard Elementary, I do believe, is used 5 days a week. And I think there might be more than one person there at a time, so I can understand why you would need more than one room in that building. Bakerville, I don't think the speech therapist is there 5 days a week either, so again, why would you need two rooms when one room isn't being fully utilized? Does that make sense? Obviously, I, like everybody else on this committee, want to see us get the maximum reimbursement we can for the facilities that we think we need in this community to service the students in our school district. I look at this and obviously, piggyback on what Mary Beth says, I think some compromises are just gonna need to be made, and that's, I think, the charge of you guys is, working with your consultant, and I appreciate the information that's being presented to try and figure out what the balance is gonna be to come up with what will work for our community.
Michelle, in terms of what Shelley was just saying, going back to this program standards piece where it says like items per school, is that, those are just based off of like what you would expect in terms of like how many schools we are operating, right? So like if we wound up consolidating to 2 schools, we would only need 2 speech rooms per school. It's not necessarily that we need 6 for the districts, it's just 2 for the school, which is, okay, I just wanna make sure that that's the right way to be thinking about that.
And that's some of
everybody's
the
clear on
inefficiencies I was trying to point
that.
out
Right, yeah,
between having the two
Yeah.
small schools.
I think everybody is aware that there are like inefficiencies there, but I just wanna make sure we're understanding how to read that chart.
I was also thinking, if we are going to be assuming that we were just keeping 2 buildings, is it possible to divide the gym from the cafeteria? Like to create 2 separate buildings, because right now it's dangerous. It's dangerous, like having the tables there for the when the students are doing activities. It hasn't happened, but eventually it can happen. Something might happen. So it would be ideal, right, to have 2 separate buildings. Is it possible?
It is, you could have a mobile wall, a lot of times you'll see that in gyms, so that they could have even 2 classes on one side, but you're dealing with still a smaller gymnasium space, so there's give and take. But yeah, it's a possibility.
Yes, come on.
Kate Wagner, Scott Holland Road, New Hartford. I have a question. Who is responsible for letting these buildings get into this condition?
Sorry, can you?
I look at Bakerville. And I pull the report. We need a new roof, it needs new windows, it needs new plumbing, it needs new electrical, it needs new siding, it has asbestos, and it has mold. Who allowed this to happen?
It's time, it was renovated 20 years ago and now it's due.
It's been 10 years since the last time we looked at closing the school. And I'm looking at this, and you wouldn't let that happen to your house. How could you let it happen to a school?
I do think
Anybody answer?
what I would say to that is that if you could look at any house and there would always be some kind of work that needs to be done. And I would say, but I would just love to finish what I was gonna say. What I believe when you were talking about the buildings here is that you did say that despite you were listing all the problems with them, that like for the length of the buildings, for the number of renovations, for the town resources that, I'm almost done, sorry. That the schools are in good condition and they have been well maintained by our staff who does a really good job of trying to keep the buildings in working order. Where as a board and as a town, we are always constrained by what resources are available. And like, as we've been talking about, like nothing can be 100% or perfect for the buildings, but we are trying to address that right now through this. We realize that there are issues with all of the buildings and the way we're utilizing them. So that's kind of the purpose of the task
I'm
force.
reading this report on Bakerville, and I was wondering, has this been taken care of? Exposed wiring and junction boxes, without cover plates, wires hanging from the roof. Has anybody called an electrician to get this fixed? No?
We can ask the superintendent what the status is of that. I believe that when we've looked at them, some of those are things that we're looking to address. I know that we can,
How long have you had this report for? A month?
yes,
And you don't have an electrician you can call to fix this problem?
I can't comment on that, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know who is in charge of the building.
You would have to talk to the to the superintendent, Mr. Jeff Souza, and the Board of Ed chair.
Dan, who's in charge of the building maintenance?
I think Mr. Wall just answered your question. Maintenance concerns should be addressed to the superintendent at town hall.
I mean, this is disgusting.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have a different question. So thank you, Dan Jerem, 535 Town Hill Road, although my wife says sometimes I live at 530 Main Street. Because I have to be there every night. So first of all, I want to thank you because you answered tonight one of my questions from a prior meeting, which went to how many similar communities to ours have 3 schools. And the answer to that is you couldn't find any, and you gave me some good places to go, like East Granby, to see, because they seem to have a similar format as us, which was interesting. My question dovetails because you were talking about the space standards, and I think you made a funny look on your face, so it piqued my curiosity, and that's why I wanted to break in. You talked about the new schools that are constructed and the amount of population that they were, and I think you said something like most of the schools that are built are kind of 60 to 80,000 square feet, and they service about 380 to 420 students, which kind of falls into close to our range, right? Yet we're sitting with 3 schools with 100,000 square feet. But then there's that adjusted state number, which is when you gave that look.
Okay.
And so I thought, is that not a real number? Or were you skeptical of that number? Because the reality is that kind of hits everything with reimbursement. But if anybody here in the audience looks at those numbers and they total up, the state says 60,000 square feet is kind of what we would build today, right? If you added those 3 numbers, and that's kind of the size of this school. It's at 58,000 square feet, and that's a curiosity. So my first question is, are those really real numbers, the 60,000 the state says, or is that kind of a baseline? Is it adjusted? Because you also made the statement that if we have 25% special ed, and everybody has 25% special ed, so we're no different than anybody else.
Probably the face I made was more that the space standards never work out to what the needs really are. They never work out. Typically, I'm not for big, major, huge schools, I'm not. But when you do have bigger schools, you can usually get more in them and hit that number better. The small schools are always gonna get hit. The fact that they are older is giving you that little bit of credit, which is helpful, because what would that rate be without it, you know? So wait, did I answer all that?
No, well, I think you're going to that, you're skeptical of the number because the needs change district to district. But if we have the same ratio of special ed, maybe as everybody else, maybe we're not that different.
No, I don't think you're that different. I don't. I think this is a common issue in every town. Every project I get into, it's so impossible to hit that square footage based on the needs we're hearing. In order to get there, things get cut, or it's the really big schools. Even, I did a school that was almost 700 kids, and they needed 2 art rooms and 2 music rooms to support the population, but in the end, we had to cut it and did an art room, a music room, and a hybrid room, kind of like you guys have. So there's always give and take in these kind of scenarios. Some towns will start and not care about the reimbursement rate, but in the end, they will care about it.
Oh, of course. Right, and that's when you see the degradation from the school size. I think everybody's curious, it piques your curiosity, because we want to be at the next meeting when you start doing what Alicia called the JV game and stuff, which piques my curiosity too. In that, and I was thinking about when Ben started talking about his comments about different things, isn't it a curiosity, or could it be said that if we could provide these services in 2 buildings as opposed to 3, then the redundancies of all those rooms that are only used once a week or whatever, will that be part of your discussion of saying, well, if you could do this, then the nurse's office or the breakout rooms or all the things that are already located in another school, all that square footage in a 3rd school becomes redundant space? And does that increase your renovation ratio?
Well, yes, I mean, when you're repeating and repeating, and especially for such small populations, it's definitely redundant and overdone, but it doesn't mean it's not needed at each school. That's the point I was trying to make.
Right.
But
By the nature of having 3 schools,
yes,
we might have 1/3 more if we only had 2 schools.
definitely, you don't need 2 gyms to support 200 kids.
But then from our taxpayer perspective, I guess my last question, because I am curious about next time, and I don't want to make you think about that before you're ready to. But if you're doing that and you're able to do that in 2 buildings, then and the populations of the other schools go up, which the state standards imply that they could based on their standards. But that reimbursement ratio in theory could go back upwards.
It could, yes, that's exactly what we need to look at. Each configuration is gonna give you a different number.
Well, I appreciate that. I look forward to your next meeting. So
Okay.
thank you all.
I would say
What
just
you
in
do.
terms of that, like, that's why the enrollment projections, like, it's important that they're broken out by grade.
By
If you're
grade,
thinking about moving a grade or saying, hey, this configuration supports this school, then our highest number for that grade over the next 8 years is this,
Exactly.
and then that increases the total population to
Yeah.
that number for that school.
One last question,
Okay.
still me. So you keep using the term projected enrollment.
Yep.
So just for clarification, are you using the medium scenario and how far out
I'm using
are
the
you going?
medium. I'm using the medium and I take the highest of the 8-year and I should tell you what that year is and I'll make sure I do next time.
Gotcha. Thank you. Just curious because I was looking at that and I said, which one is used?
Yep. I will do that.
Thank you.
But even so, it's not a great difference between
It's
the high,
not,
the medium,
it's
and the
not.
low.
Typically, I've always used medium. I've had one district that's like, no, we want to use the high just to increase the reimbursement rate, basically.
Will you look at that?
I can, but I mean, it was a few kids. It's really not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just like, if we're like 1 or 2 kids under,
It's
like.
not gonna make that much of a difference, really.
I'm just saying, like.
We can, yeah. I always do what Mike usually tells me, go with the medium. So he says every time.
Any other questions from anybody? Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, Rebecca Vinny, 184 East Cotton Hill. I just have a couple of quick clarification questions, 'cause I love looking at all the numbers. So I apologize in advance for that. But you had ideal square footage numbers listed, and I was wondering if they were based on the class size of our school, or if they were based on class sizes of a typical school.
It's typical. It's, most of what I presented was from the state data. The
Okay.
state says this is the standard to kind of work off of, aside from when I kind of corrected them on the media side.
Okay, so for the kindergarten classrooms that were way too small,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say way too small, like
Yeah, they're
75%.
working. I shouldn't.
Is that class size, like our class sizes, I believe are hopefully capped at 20, for kindergarten, is the,
For kindergarten.
it's 20, it's
You're right.
K through 2 is 20. Is the typical classroom 24 or 25?
The state does put that on there, and I can't recall exactly.
Okay,
Because they
I
also
think
don't
if it
dictate
was
that.
25,
They kind of
we'd
base
be
it on.
very close square footage per child.
I think it is typically 25,
Okay.
but I can.
Just because that kind of stood out as a thing.
Yeah,
And
that's a
then,
good point.
I know 4 years ago, when my son was in kindergarten, and maybe I shouldn't be divulging this, but they gave us a map for parent-teacher conferences of where to go. And there were 2 classrooms that were listed they were Xed out and it said empty. Are there any empty buildings in Bakerville or New Hartford currently?
No.
On your tables, you list classroom sizes, but there's some numbers missing. So like in Bakerville, I didn't see, I think it was classroom 5 was missing and classroom 2.
So
listed on the
the
list.
numbers are a little funky there, and I did, like, the social workers room is number 1. That sped room is number 3. There's a 4, the library is 4, so you're right, there is a 2 missing. I'd have to look at the floor plan to know exactly why.
Because I saw that at New Hartford too, where like classroom 11 was missing, and then I couldn't keep all the numbers in my head, but there were numbers in the 20s that seemed to be missing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
And I know
have,
there's like I don't know New Hartford Elementary very well, but it looked like there was a big jump between classroom 14 and 20 something. That might be the design of the building,
it's
and
just the way
even
the number
Dan
is.
Angelini did, so I was just kind of curious if,
Yeah, the numbers are not always sequential, so it does jump.
yeah.
So there's like.
Well, that would make sense because it's a 2-story building that they might have that jump in New Hartford Elementary, but I didn't know about Batesville. I just wanted to
Yeah, no, I
raise
mean,
that in case there was some data missing.
yeah, no, everything's accounted for. Maybe I have a number 2 that I have to look into that.
Sorry about that, I'm
Yeah,
just a scientist,
yeah,
so
no,
I love looking
it's
at numbers and such.
The Bakerville number 2 is actually the workroom, which is part break room, part copy room.
Okay,
And so
that's
it's
what
not
it
a
is.
classroom.
Okay.
So and that's like
And 5 is, you've got the math.
5 is the art.
Yeah, they're not like
Oh,
official
okay,
numbers.
all right, thank you, he's saying that they're in there somewhere,
Oh, yeah, I
there's
see
numbered
it.
on the list. Okay, thank you very much.
That was a good point, you brought up the fact that they're using 20.
Numbers based off of possibly much higher classroom sizes and more.
Yeah, so the, where our average classroom is like 17, 18, right, students. We're not doing 20 and 25, although that's what the state is is that
The
pretty
state
hard?
does- You have I believe this is a contract, or it's what you guys established here.
The union
This.
contracts say that's what they can have in their classroom.
Yeah, these are Board of Ed standards.
And that's pretty typical among districts.
Yeah.
That's not off, I mean, I might see 22.
But
or-
because of those sizes, she's giving us a square footage size, right?
Well, the square footage isn't necessarily based, the square footage of a classroom that we're recommending isn't necessarily based on the specific amount of kids in there. That's just a standard for a pre-K.
I don't know where the state standards come from, right? Like what you
Yeah,
said, the
but
state.
that doesn't make sense.
However, I know like in pre-K, there's like a NIAC accreditation, and they do give a square footage per student that you have to meet, but it's not, it's small, it's actually much smaller.
So for
There's a lot of different
1,200
ways to look at it.
square footage, what if our kindergartens are only 12 kids,
They actually
right?
wanted to work this year.
So
And
that would be a lot of room for 12 kids.
It's a lot of room, but that's not what we're planning for, generally speaking, right? Like having that few students in a kindergarten classroom is not.
And I know parents don't want 25 kids in grades 3 through 6.
Right, we plan around if we needed to put that many kids in, that's the maximum we could put.
My understanding from the pre-K and the K versus the rest is the usage of the room and the storage needed for the room and the movement of the room for incorporating nap time, reading time needs a bigger space, not based on the size of the class or the size of the children.
Yeah, that's good.
Although the state reimbursement does factor in the size of the children. doesn't
It does,
That is
that's what I believe she was
fascinating.
asking, and that I'm gonna
But
have.
like younger, no, like the reimbursement by sizes, you can have more students in high school
Oh,
and get reimbursed because they're bigger, physically bigger.
There, you know what, I do have that in here somewhere.
A weird.
So here, like, you'll see it says 125. It gives you a range, and it's gonna be based on population. So in some scenarios, in elementary school, it'll be 104, and some it'll be 125. But that's the older sheet, I just wanna see the new one, because I did a zoom in. So here, so a school 0 to 350, they're giving about 125 square feet per student, 124. And as you get older, it gives you a little more. So your 5th and 6th grade are getting more, kind of hence instrumental that they need, that others don't, stuff like that. So even the bigger the school, the less they get, but yet there is some economy and scale that just works.
It's state math.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I took your face to represent. they want these ideal standards, but then they don't.
When I
have
took
the
that
space
floor
to
plan,
get
it's
there.
like you could never fit that, you could
No.
never get that within their standards,
No.
so, and they show it, and it's like, yeah. That was my snarky comment.
Any other public comment tonight? Thing not related to the presentation. All right, we're closing public comment. Thank you,
Was there anybody
Michelle.
online?
Oh, what?
Anybody else?
Oh.
For public comment?
Anybody online, raise your hand for public comment and we will promote you as such. No. No hands. All right, closing public comment for that. For the next presentation, we'll just talk a little bit about this now because it's topical. So you will be presenting basically high-level overviews of like all of the options for consideration.
I mean,
And then, yeah, well, you can talk.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna throw them all out there, and if we wanna cut any out right away, that's fine.
Right.
If we wanna push to the next level with them, great.
And so we'll have that meeting on April 22nd. And then in terms of like what we want to like narrow it down to, do you want us to give that direction at the next meeting? Or,
I mean, I think you guys need time,
Okay.
unless there was just some glaring, yeah.
and so
This is
that-
where it could take multiple meetings, you could never get there. Sorry.
I believe in our ability to make
Yes,
a decision and move things forward. Okay, so just in terms of like what to expect, again, they're gonna be high level preliminary numbers, like in terms of like trying to like pick and choose what each one is gonna look at, it's gonna be hard to say, like, they're ballpark numbers based off of the square footage, like price per square.
Yeah,
foot that you
to
put
be
together.
honest, I haven't even, I
Yeah.
have like options laid out in a spreadsheet, but I don't have any math done with
Yeah.
them yet at all. And I have a week to get it to you. and
Yeah,
I'm
no,
doing
oh,
some
sorry, I'm not
analysis, so
trying to
just
say that it should be done right now. I'm trying to paint a picture
Oh,
of
yeah.
what people should expect from that, as well as like understanding like, what about the numbers is not going to be 100% accurate? It's gonna be more directional because you're not gonna know like the full cost or the full impact of a particular configuration because you haven't gone into the weeds on
Exactly.
that.
Cause, if we're gonna add on to a school, sometimes, you're gonna put a corridor through another room and that room goes away or becomes smaller. There's so much, variables in there that are gonna come up. So I'm just kind of gonna look big picture, based on the square footage we have, what we know, how many classrooms there are. So it'll be high level.
Thank you. I want to move on to item G, which is old business. The first is an update from our stakeholder engagement subcommittee. So, committee members who are here tonight.
Here we are. Yes, so the stakeholders subcommittee is myself, Samantha, and Penny Miller. We had one meeting. We attempted to address logistical questions about the survey, the goals, and the timing. The survey should be used to solicit feedback on options formed by the task force for any proposed changes to the infrastructure and organization of the New Hartford Public Schools. Survey will be made available to residents of New Hartford. Survey respondents will be required to provide name and address or confirm residency, but the information will not be publicized with any survey data. There will be an online option using Google Forms and a hard copy option for distribution. There will be designated locations in town with blank surveys available for pickup and also for return for completed surveys. We discussed potential locations, New Hartford Town Hall, central offices at the schools, and then some other businesses in town, Petrichone's Pharmacy, Barden Farm Market, and Gresick Farms, if they would like to cooperate with us on this endeavor. The survey can be publicized and made available through the school's communication channels for parents. We all agreed at this meeting and at the subcommittee that we have to make a big effort to publicize this for people outside the schools in the general population. The efforts could include the New Hartford Town website, Facebook, flyers, and a press release to local papers. So based on the discussion at the last task force meeting, it was clear that the group wanted to use the survey to present the proposed options that we decide on as this task force to the public and solicit feedback on those options. So based on this, we would propose to make the survey available by May 12th or as soon as the options are formulated, because this schedule corresponds with the color-coded task force timeline. We proposed that there would be a 10-day data collection period, and the content of the survey questions will have to be formulated as the work of this task force progresses. That's as far as we got.
Thank you so much for the update. I have a couple of comments there. One, in terms of like potential locations, I would also recommend taking a look at the libraries. They have asked to help promote information in the past, and so those are good public places that I assume will be happy to keep that stuff for us. I want to be clear about the group wanted to use the survey to present the proposed options. So that would be the 3 proposed options that we plan to narrow. Like, we're going to present high level concepts at the next meeting and then narrow it down to 3 for further exploration. So
However many we narrow it down to, whether it's 3 or 2. But yeah, it would be distilled down from the work of this task force.
okay, great. Will you have a process for deduping submissions? So deduplicating any submissions that come in, like when you actually do the data collect, who's going to do the data analysis? I guess.
haven't gotten that.
Okay, great.
But I imagine, but if we have them, just like when you go to vote, you have to provide your name and address.
Yeah.
That's not part of your ballot.
Yeah.
It's just verifying your residency.
Yeah.
So you need to provide that information so that your residency can be verified.
Mhm.
And so if you were to duplicate it, you would have that twice.
Yeah, like someone could like potentially like fill out an online form
Online
and like
and in
submit a
paper.
paper one.
Right, so you would have that in data point.
Yeah.
And then that can eliminate the.
Just as long as we're doing, when we do the data collection, that we're taking that into
Correct.
account and making sure
Yeah.
that.
If they're able to provide you with an Excel sheet of, well, that's only registered voters.
No,
And also, I think 2 family members in the same address should be able to.
Yeah, we would need
that's what we
names.
said, name and
Yeah.
address.
But
So
how would you confirm that name lived at that address?
If you're not checking licenses like they do for voting.
no, it's not, it would be at the town clerk's office because it doesn't have anything to do with voting. It doesn't matter if you register. It's just,
Yeah,
you just have to be
registered voters.
yeah, you just have to be a registered resident of the town. Yeah, so we will work on that too.
Yes.
And I would add to the library, but also, doesn't seem like there's any Bakerville side of businesses.
Yeah,
Added
the
to
one we
that.
have is Grace Farms.
Okay.
So if you have any other
Grace Farms.
suggestions,
We were thinking possibly the
Rabbits.
village market
Mm.
as an
Yeah,
option
Yeah, definitely.
also.
Do you have any, I assume not, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. When would you have some concept of how much this would cost?
It would depend upon how long the survey would be. So obviously digitally, Google Forms, there's no cost to that. Paper, obviously you have copying costs. We did price out ballot boxes to like put them into, so like deposit those. Those are quite inexpensive. I was looking on Amazon and there was a short, hold please, for like a 6-pack of the cardboard ballot boxes. It was like anywhere from $7 to $13 for a 6-pack. So that cost is not extraordinary. Obviously, paper would be one of the most expensive options. Well, not expensive options, but cost consumption.
But we didn't anticipate any mailing costs, so I just.
Yeah, we're just gonna,
No mailer.
I mean, unless somebody sees a need for it, but we anticipated publicizing it and providing locations where people can access the survey.
Because if we were to do the mailer, it's not like we're mailing the survey to them. It would just be saying, hey, go to these different locations. Where if that is there, a rough cost of it based upon some numbers that I was poking around for direct mailers from USPS was anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 for that, based upon, especially off of different political party stuff, correct, quotes. So we can get more definitive pricing on that, which is fine, but we thought in a way like this, for now, would be more cost effective.
I think if we get to further on in the process and we want to get information to everyone before they may come out to vote on something, that's when we would do a mailer.
Yeah, so we would have to see as we move through it. And I think that was also another reason why we thought of petrocones, because, prescriptions. And people have to go there often, although I know they do delivery, but yeah.
I will say that we have not had any applicants for the videographer. You can see John is still bringing his owl to the meetings. So we did, like previously, secure funds for that have not yet been deployed for this purpose, which is up to $3,000. So I assume that most of the task force members would be amenable to like considering that if we needed to do a mailer, because we had already agreed to use those funds to help with community engagement. So that is a proposal that I would float if we went down that road. I do just want to be very mindful of, I know that there have been concerns about reaching people who are not available digitally, and I think you guys have done a great job of this, but that still assumes that people get out and not everybody gets out.
Well,
So
I mean, another group that we would work with based on the problems last time would be the senior center.
Yeah.
Yeah, working with Kara for different things like that, so.
Kristen, can you hear me?
I can, Penny. I cannot believe you're listening to this call. I hope that you are feeling great.
I'm still in my pajamas. That's why you can't see me. Excuse me. There was something that they were talking about, the surveys that are going out. And you were
Yes.
wondering about places on the south side of town. The only one I can think of is Gresix. The libraries would be a good place.
Yeah.
And as far as people having duplicates, if they don't sign their name and their address, then we would not consider those people. At least I wouldn't think so.
Correct.
And we can also, if you want to go even further, to check to make sure that they are New Hartford owners, but they also pay taxes in town, even though they don't live here. Part of their tax money still goes into our tax base that pays for our schools and stuff. I think maybe we should consider those people. But we could check GIS mapping too to make sure that they do live in town.
I think those are good thoughts. There's not gonna be 100% way for us to like use public records to validate everything. So I think we just need to plan for when we do the data analysis, like understanding what that is, taking a look at the survey respondents, making sure we feel comfortable about duping based off of like any person level thing, and then using the publicly information available we do have. And then maybe if not, if there's a couple people that we don't know who they are or like where they're coming from, we can try to like, they'll have their address, so we can, go leave a note on their door, like weirdos, and ask them to kind of validate.
We had also mentioned asking Kara DeSantis, who's in charge of the recreation group with the older population. Maybe she could send something out to those people, or have sheets of paper up by her desk where they come up to play cards and whatever else they play during the week, and they can fill out the form then.
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job of identifying a bunch of places where we can try to get people who are out and about in town. I'm just raising the mailer as something to consider for people who don't get out.
Yeah,
I know
but
those people.
But they're gonna have the Google Doc to do that too, right?
But if
Yes.
they don't.
But if they don't get out and they're not digital, then we're not.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know how many of them know how to use Google Docs either. I had to learn, so.
two options, but
Yeah.
Alicia had a good point. I would not be in favor of using a mailer for this survey, but to get people to weigh in on the ultimate decision, I think, yeah, we want to reach more people. So,
Okay, so this is really just an initial
this is
gathering.
it's a chance for more
Yeah.
public input.
Yeah.
Right.
Is what it is.
And just, I know you haven't gotten to that point, but maybe consider, because it's gonna be a lot of data to put together. I hope it's a lot of data to put together. Maybe we can reach out to the high school team to see if they want volunteer hours for use of AI and data collection. There's gotta be some people if they're always looking for volunteer hours that make sense to what they wanna do.
Sure.
Thank you guys for the update and the questions for our intrepid subcommittee.
I will say this, it has been a good meeting.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Lounging on the couch.
No, I'm sitting in my recliner watching with my feet up.
Stay there.
Questions?
Carleen Sharon, 535 Town Hill Road, sorry. So I just had questions, Shelley brought up a question about Google Docs, and she couldn't get into Google Docs, and I think that's not unusual for people. Have we thought about using like a survey, or any one of the Microsoft forms? There's all sorts of ways to do surveys that are not Google Docs that might be easier for some folks that maybe not be as digitally engaged.
The Google Forms is like that, like you can say, here's a question and here's multiple choices.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I use Google Docs,
You
but I'm saying
you
that.
have to sign into a Google account, and if you don't.
No, you can do it without signing into a Google account.
I've never been able to do a survey.
I know that you can't. Yeah, I tried, I know that you.
Okay,
So we looked at free options.
Okay, yeah, because some of the survey, this survey, yeah, exactly, MailChimp, there's a variety of them that may give you also the ability to do the analysis, maybe. Somebody like me, I prefer the spreadsheet because I'll go do my own analysis, but, it might be, it's just worth looking at, and if you're already looking at it, that's great, so perfect.
We were, like I said, we were trying to look at the free options, but if we have a budget, we'll go for it.
I'm not saying you do have a budget, I'm just saying if you had a budget, you should present it. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna close that and move on to, item B under old business. Sorry. Yes, Cody, hi.
Sorry, hi, Kirby Moranti, 3 Sloan Street. Is there a way that we could take the survey results and separate out, like the teachers and faculty, staff in general, not saying who said what, but kind of the employees of the public schools, what their take is versus general taxpayers?
So if they are residents of New Hartford, not all staff are residents of New Hartford. So if they're residents of New Hartford, they'll be filling out the survey. We were planning to have a designation for parents. We can add a designation for teachers and staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think they could give their opinion, even if they are not residents, because they have been utilizing the schools. So that's like another category that could be invented.
We could solicit that in a different way, but
In a different
but they're not taxpayers.
Yeah, this is really a taxpayer, and we could absolutely do a staff survey. I'm not opposed to that. That was not the purpose of this particular committee. And I will also say that Michelle has been working directly with the school administration and soliciting their feedback about the programming, the capacity of what's working and what has not. So while I do think that would be a useful data point for us to get a sense for that, there are school climate surveys that go out every year to parents as well as teachers and staff that have some of that information in there that we could use for this purpose. And so I'm not sure what other questions we would try to ask for the staff to kind of help from that perspective. I do think that this particular survey should be limited to people who live in town, because that's who we need to make the decision and vote on the budget. This is a pretty typical way of getting input. I mean, I would imagine from a district of our size as well, in terms of the conversations you've been having with the school.
Yeah, I would say most towns I've worked with, it's been mostly all online. versus the mailers. That does happen a lot during for referendum information more. The last one I worked on did include staff in with it, they clicked if they were staff. So I get that you want to separate taxpayer versus non-taxpayer, but I think they're all valuable, it's all valuable information.
Yeah.
I mean, the staff is the users of the building, so are the students, ask them, I mean, there's, yeah.
But it's not their money if they don't.
No,
live here.
I get that, I get that.
I don't remember when the staff climate survey gets sent out. I have a follow-up on that. Okay. Good. Yes,
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I would say maybe at the end of that survey, you have 3 or 4 scenarios, maybe just having a sort of checkbox. Are you a parent of a school-age child?
Yeah.
Are you
Oh,
a
yeah.
faculty member? Just some sort of,
Mhm.
you know.
yeah, understanding of the
Yeah.
demographic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I definitely want the staff input, because they're the ones that live it day in, day out.
Yeah.
So I think that could be one of the most valuable portions. Obviously, taxpayer dollars is the top input, but yeah, I would love that demographic information too, for that.
Kristen?
My neighbor was wondering, she pays $15,000 a year in property tax. How much, we don't want to know what the mill rate is going to be. Whatever you do, how is this going to affect our property tax?
That's the question. That's a good question. We don't know that yet.
Okay. We don't want to know the mill rate, we want to know if it goes up 1,000 or if it goes up 2,000 per home.
We won't know that right now. We have to explore that.
I understand that, but that's going to be a major question in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, for parents, I mean, parents too, everyone wants to know that exact.
Pardon?
Parent, not parent, senior, young, everyone is taxpayer wants to know what the cost benefit's gonna be.
But I think you don't realize there are a lot of retired people that live in New Hartford.
Yep.
And a lot of retired people have been moving out because they can't afford to live here.
There was a family that, and the mom couldn't afford to send her child to preschool. So I mean, there's seniors, there's kids. I mean, the dollars affects everyone. And so, I'm saying there's lots of people concerned about that exact topic. So just.
It's going to affect house sales and everything.
Yeah.
Just remember that.
I'm very mindful of what we
I know you.
charge for our mill rate. And Dan and I are very heavily involved in the budget. And that's on our mind all the time. I'm sorry, Mary Beth.
No worries.
Dan and I have been at it for a long time.
On your mind.
Thank you, subcommittee. Moving on to the next item under old business, which is to review and possibly take action regarding the revised decision matrix framework. So this is something that was printed out and left with you guys today. I lost my copy, but I have one over here. This is a scoring matrix that, at the last meeting, we discussed some amendments based off of what, sorry, Carrie, here you go. We discussed some amendments based off of, from the original sample that Michelle had provided. And so this version incorporates the amendments that we discussed during the last meeting. So I wanted to have everybody review it and discuss and see if this is something that we want to move forward with. The main revisions here were taking into account the resource sharing efficiency between schools, the potential for alternative repurposed building use, the traffic patterns of the site under construction issues. And in terms of the options that are across the top, those are just kind of like placeholders. It doesn't mean that that's how many options we will actually have there. Those are the options that Michelle will represent. But again, the goal here is that we have some sort of numerical-based scoring framework that we can use to help level set what each of the options might provide to us, with, just kind of a weighted factor for each of these items. So I will take a motion to approve this for use, if anybody's open to doing that, so we can discuss.
Make a motion
To discuss,
to discuss.
second.
A motion by Sam, to adopt the options evaluation matrix, seconded by John, so open for discussion.
No, to discuss.
To discuss.
Not to adopt.
Discuss.
To discuss,
But
sorry.
you can make a motion to approve it, but then under discussion, then you're gonna, when we vote, like your motion is to discuss, but then what's the end result that we just discussed? So the motion should be, we'll approve it, discussion,
Right,
vote
we can
up or
vote down the
down,
motion,
or we can amend, amend it within the discussion.
So I make a motion to adopt the matrix.
Thank you. So, right, motion by Nan to adopt the matrix, motion by Sam, second by John to adopt the matrix, so open for discussion.
Where did the matrix come from?
It was, the original framework was a sample that Michelle provided during like one of the first meetings. As something that she had used elsewhere for other school projects. So given that we didn't have anything available, we figured it would maybe just be easy to adopt an existing framework versus starting from scratch. But I'm open to other options here too.
So this didn't have any weigh in on us, this was just taking somebody else's.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we took a first look at this, and we discussed some factors that we wanted to incorporate that were not reflected on the original sample. So this version incorporates those changes that were raised by task force members at the last meeting.
So Michelle, this is a format that you have used successfully,
Yes,
so.
It's just like a scorecard.
Yeah.
The only thing for number 2, construction issues, I don't necessarily like the title, construction issues.
What would you propose that be?
I'm not sure, I've been trying to work on that.
constructability.
Working title?
Or like
Is that a word?
infrastructure issues or something like that, because I don't want it to seem like, okay, well, construction issues, these are things that can become issues during construction. Maybe I'm just thinking too literal because I'm pretty tired at the moment, but I don't know.
Is it
Maybe
like
tomorrow it'll be better.
implementation? Sorry,
So I can see, I don't know.
It's a discussion, so I don't know if anybody else has a discussion.
I haven't.
Right, because you can have traffic pattern issues with construction,
Or is it long-term?
or is it
Oh.
long term? Yeah.
My assumption was that the traffic issues that were raised were not related just to the construction phase, but to like generally the site and the way it's being
Right.
utilized and like what impact it would have.
Yes,
In the
thank
new
you. So
state.
maybe site issues,
Or maybe not issues.
or, yeah,
Physical conditions?
conditions.
Considerations. Consider the audience's considerations.
Yeah, because technology upgrades isn't an issue.
Yeah.
Let's,
Well, the whole first column, just because I know you guys can't see it, is consideration, is that whole first column.
There you go.
So I don't want that.
Maybe just construction,
Right,
Just the word construction.
cost, construction, education, results. I disagree on the technology upgrade. So I think
in
that's
terms of what,
being a very low priority. You know, everything can't be a priority, but it doesn't necessarily say that.
what would you propose that be?
A 2.
The 2? Any reaction to Carrie's proposal on bumping technology up from a 1 to a 2?
I agree.
Is there a reason why it starts as a 1?
Not necessarily, I
Just
mean,
the way the other district did it.
Okay,
I mean, we've had this in our office for years and years, this method.
okay.
I don't know exactly where it originated, but that's the way, we always had 1, 2, and 3. You can add, I mean, you can do whatever you want, really. Again, it's just gonna be a math formula in the end.
Or disruption to existing programs, is phasing and sequencing disruption to existing programs. And those during the process or those?
It sounds
Yeah, some of
like
this, it seems like project management, some of it seems like,
It smells like, again, the short term, like
So maybe we
construction
add another
versus
section.
like long term, here's how the facility actually.
Right.
Like a technology upgrade, is more like long term.
It does, but
facility.
yeah, site condition and constraints.
Got it.
Or phasing
So
and
maybe
So
sequencing.
this is really like
section.
transitional phase considerations.
So if it's a temporary thing, I guess technology upgrades doesn't matter.
I was thinking,
But
the
if it's
technology
long-term-
piece may ties into more educational results of our facility.
kind of doesn't fit there.
Right. Maybe that moves educational results, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could fit better.
I think it's better there, yeah.
Or project results if technology could fit there too, either way.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe let's take these one section at a time. To just organize and make a decision before we move on to one. Does everybody feel okay about that? Okay, great. So let's start with one cost where we have, the elements underneath that are overall project cost, probable state reimbursement, net cost to district, cost predictability, ongoing operating costs, with parentheses, staffing, utilities, maintenance, and transportation and busing costs as the last element. Those are mostly threes with the exception of cost predictability and transportation and busing costs being weighted as twos. And again, the scale is a 1 to 3 scale. Where, sorry, those are the weightings. And we'll bring them.
Yeah, weight has to do with priority, just because I know you guys, are you looking at it? Hold on. Don't know if that's.
But do you want to
I don't
screen
think
share
no.
for trying to, I don't know if it's easier to.
Yeah,
I don't have the right dongle for that. I don't have the right adapter for that, John, so no.
Okay.
I was thinking that the transportation, busing costs, if we are going to keep 2 or 3 buildings, it would be basically the same, right? That we have now.
The transportation cost was a big issue with the closure of Bakerville, so I think that probably should be a bigger weight, just given the history. Because the buses became a lot more expensive because they were going further and transporting students, obviously farther. But it also was a big community thing because there was an hour bus ride
Yeah.
for these tiny little ladders.
The time piece, really,
Yeah.
on the buses.
Yeah. And issues that can
Yeah, I
arise.
didn't think
Yeah.
about it because,
So I think that should be, just given the history,
Yeah,
that's
towards
specific
that.
to,
so then it should be remain at 2,
I think a 3.
3.
It was a
More
big deal
important,
for, it was a really, and again, that was nowhere near where we're at on this.
So I'm gonna nitpick on that just from in
Yeah,
terms of like the
please.
way that this is organized, because right now this is that is slated as a cost issue. Where my understanding of the transportation issue was not necessarily the cost, but more the time for transportation, which again is.
The cost wasn't factored into the overall decision, because they made mention that there would be no additional cost in it, and that's not accurate.
I wonder if that
People
would,
didn't trust that.
It was questionable, yeah.
Okay, again, I
So, yeah,
totally, I
yeah,
agree that it
to
was
your
something
point,
that
if
came
we're
up during the
closing-
last one, but I wanna make
If
sure
the
we're
school is
weighting
closing,
it
there's renovation,
appropriately.
there's cost savings, the bus doesn't matter, yeah. If it's just a cost thing.
Yeah. There was a cost element and it can be, like,
I would say that the
No
cost of the busing might be 2, but the time involved for the actual transportation would be a 3.
Yeah.
But that would be a second line.
and right, and the transportation time, I would maybe put under project results.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or educational results, because even under education,
Right.
there's resource sharing efficiency, food service equipment and specialist, maybe it falls closer to that.
Either way.
I see what you're saying, I'm just thinking that through.
You're talking about the buses going.
The time of them, yeah,
Time of the bus.
the
Starting
runs.
time of buses.
My question, just throwing this out there, it doesn't have to do with the weight of it, is just for future thought process, because I know the Board of Ed just renegotiated the contract for the next 5 years.
Mhm.
I'd be curious to see if whatever timeline for whatever decisions come from this, if that would affect that contract.
Right, so
Just out of
I think the way the
curiosity.
contract is structured right now is that, so one thing I do know about the way we just redid the bus contract was that we aligned our bus contract with Regional 7. We all went to bid out as one, so that is one big thing. We got some cost savings from that for the actual budget by kind of packaging it all up as one. And I believe that it, part of the contract relates to just like the number of buses that are operating in the town. And so I don't know that from that perspective that there would be much of a cost element to it. What I don't know, and I would be speaking out of turn, is if there is in some way we are responsible for like fuel costs as part of that, then like maybe having longer routes would like impact the cost from that direction, but I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, totally understand, but I'm just trying to talk about what I know about the existing bus contracts, and the way that they're currently structured right now.
Well, they were probably in the middle of a contract when they decided to close the school. And DACA was, consulted, and that's when they came back after and they said, yeah, we wouldn't add any bus routes. And they were saying, you might see an increase of, what was it, like 3 to 5 minutes or something per run on the average, something like that. But we were just skeptical that they wouldn't have to add, because in 2012, they were recommending that they would add buses if they closed a school. So, but I'm just saying, they were probably in the middle of a contract when they came back to us and said they wouldn't add a bus. I would imagine that hopefully they would work with us if we decided that
Right.
we really need to reconfigure everything.
Especially as a big collaborative district type of thing, multi-district, so. All right.
There's always all
So,
star.
so if you could, so this category, educational results, is not, these are not all necessarily education related, it's more of student, experience. So you can certainly put bus route fit or bus route.
We could rename that category to student experience and then put the bus transportation time.
But we need education results, I mean, we're
Right,
well,
well,
we're jumping ahead though, so I guess, are we staying on costs? Or are we going to?
Well, because the transportation thing is there's an element to it that is currently under cost, I'm just trying to figure out how to separate that out. And so I think it's relevant for us.
Leave it there, just leave it as a two, I would say. If it's
Yeah,
a
for just the
cost,
straight
yeah,
cost.
Just straight cost, not.
Travel time or something as a separate one. If we want.
Somewhere else, yeah. Okay, we're good on one.
Actually, so we have, so we have overall project cost, probable state reimbursement, and net cost district.
Sounds like the
And
same
one thing,
exact
like bottom line, what's our cost for a district? That's what we all,
It takes the whole thing into consideration, yeah.
so I don't think we need the first two.
Yes.
We need the
Overall project cost inclusive of state
No,
reimbursement.
I think
and
that,
net
no, I
cost
think the
district.
state reimbursement is important to know and to optimize it as best we can. I think it still needs to be in there.
Well, I totally agree, it's just what's the net cost is what
Yeah,
matters.
I think those two are the same. Probable state reimbursement and net costs are the same. I mean, the opposite.
Is it's like
One
gross
net,
cost.
one
Gross
versus the other.
cost minus reimbursement gets us to our net cost. I
Mhm.
mean, if anything,
Well,
it's,
the overall project cost is gonna end up being the net cost to the town.
Yeah.
Yes?
the net cost
Well,
gets
Well,
us,
it gives the picture, it gives the whole, you're saying we don't need all three lines. but it gives you the whole picture.
It gives the whole
This is the scope of what we're saying we would do, this is the reimbursement, and it just gives you the whole picture.
And then there's the net cost of
Yeah.
it.
And then it can't all be
Yeah,
threes though,
the
because
whole
I mean,
picture.
this is where if it costs $100 million, but then the net cost is five, then like, it doesn't, like,
So the net cost should be 3, but the project costs should be
3, 2,
2, is
1.
that what you're saying?
Yeah,
or one, I mean, really, it doesn't, like, for decisions that matter, like this, what really matters, we're giving equal weight to the overall project cost as well as the net cost. What matters to our taxpayers is the net cost.
which then is related to the state reimbursement.
Yeah, so that ties in, but
Yeah,
yeah, so
right.
bottom line, we get to the net cost. And from a board of finance, board of selectmen, it's like, how can we finance this? That's, there's a net cost of like, what's this amount, but then how?
Yeah, but the full faith and credit of the town goes for the full cost.
Agreed. So you don't need to know that piece there, but we don't have anything about what the actual,
Overall.
what it translates to our question earlier about what's my property tax increase on a year-over-year basis based on this project. We don't have that.
What if we just change the weight of the first 2 to 2s?
It's still,
Was there an element of the overall project cost? I feel like there was something you said tonight in the presentation regarding the overall project cost and like what would need to happen from like a bonding perspective or like
Yes, so.
that would influence the decision that, like the route that we would take that would be important?
The town would be responsible for the total cost of it. We would have to get funding to the total cost of it. The
We
state
get
reimburses
reimbursed after.
Right,
We put out all the money,
right,
because that comes out of our out of our general fund,
right,
and then we get reimbursed later,
right.
when the project's
It's
completed.
kind of right there, the last bullet point.
Yeah, thank you.
So by having those 3
We need
lines there,
authorization to
Weighted
borrow
at
the full amount,
3.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
look at all the rest below that, they're all weighted at 2. So this formula is giving, it is prioritizing cost based on that. And by having 3 lines weighted at 3, you're giving it even more priority.
Versus everything being equal as one line. I see what you're getting at. Got it.
but I agree with that, but however, if we're thinking about what matters for taxpayers, it's the net cost and then how we finance it to pay for that, which is not here. So if it's gonna be $100 million before the reimbursement, but then the cost to our taxpayers is dramatically less, the big price tag's in the same way as what it costs, but what do people care about? In case of point.
The big price tag is, but the state reimbursement is getting the same weight in this formula also.
Cost.
What
is
do we
what-
have in our undesignated fund balance?
Not enough.
Right, exactly.
3 million and something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
The town does not-
if you look at this picture overall, it's giving cost a higher weight, and I think that's appropriate.
Right, because we're going to be making decisions based on that.
Right, and everything else, it gets a lower weight, but there are a lot of other, there's only 3 lines related to cost directly. Cost predictability, and these are expenses, but if you look at how those go into the formula, I would think having those 3 lines.
So that weights cost at like a total possible of 18 out of 8, and I'm trying to do that actual math, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10, 12. $40, $50, $63. There's like 63, like total, you add up all of the items and then times them by 3 for weighting, it's 63, and cost is 18, so what is 18 divided by 63? So cost is being weighted at 28% of the overall score, which is the all-in cost score with having those 6 line items there. That is the same for educational results is also 18, so that's another 28%, and then the third category is construction issues, which is 15. 15 potential points, which is 24%, and then the project results, 12, this is 20% of the score. That's what you're getting at, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if it really is about construction issues, I'm not sure if that deserves the same weight for temporary traffic pattern on site as program fit and flexibility for future use. I would put construction issues, from my perspective, if it is really just short-term construction as ones.
So so then in terms of the question that you were originally asking there, then I would say that I put that in the wrong category, and where that should really go in terms of the question that was being raised with the traffic patterns at the site. Again, if it was a longer term, like what does that do to the site usage and so on and so forth, I would say that goes under, I should move that, take it out of construction issues and move it to project results. In terms of the issue that was being raised
Yeah,
with that, right?
yes, I mean, I think this is a long-term question of traffic patterns for example, at New Hartford Elementary, you doubled the number of cars going in and out of a one-way road.
Yeah.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Right, so commenting that the buses had a hard time getting back there anyway and putting more students at that school.
So I was looking at this as a long-term issue, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so then I would move that to project results. Okay. Anything else under construction issues?
Yeah, honestly, the traffic patterns during construction can fall under site conditions and constraints.
We
That's a
can
general.
avoid that as like a one.
To me, construction issues short-term would be as important as like the long-term finances or the long-term educational. It seems like it's weighted as though it is more important than it should. So my opinion would be ones.
So traffic patterns at sites, under construction issues, we'll leave it a one. We'll add a traffic pattern at site, an additional line item to project results.
Yeah.
Great, okay, move to project results.
So did we move technology upgrades also?
What was your question?
Did we move technology upgrades? I know somebody mentioned that, I didn't know if I just.
So project results, I don't know if it even belongs in there. I was more just, it didn't seem like it fit there. But maybe it doesn't matter. It's a small thing compared to the bigger parts for this.
Do you have any context on like what this may have been used in reference to in the past as related to construction? The technology upgrades piece?
I honestly, I'm not sure off the top of my head. It might be more about improving Wi-Fi and different things like that, which I would say would fall under the educational component or the results. Yeah, I could see it going in 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a no-brainer at this point.
I don't know if it deserves its own line.
I was just gonna say the same
I
thing,
think
we
this
can probably just strike it.
Like I said, this has been around our office for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like-
Yeah, no, it's totally
We
fine.
should really-
I don't, in terms of like what we have within the schools, like I don't, like, that has not been a driving
We've already
factor in any
done
of the decisions.
improvements at the schools.
We've already
I
done
think
some improvements, there's things that are ongoing, technology is one of those things that like,
technology
you have to constantly, yeah. So, okay, so I will strike that from the scoring matrix.
Plus like yeah, in any of these like renovate as new, you would upgrade all of that anyway.
Remove from matrix. Great, okay. So construction issues will now have technology upgrades removed entirely. It will just be phasing and sequencing, disruption to existing programs, site conditions and constraints in traffic patterns at site during construction. Okay. So for the 4 categories that are remaining there, phasing and sequencing, we have weighted as a 2, disruption to existing programs as 2, site conditions as 2s, and the traffic patterns as a 1. that feel right to everybody? Great. Moving on to educational results. 1, 2, 3, so again, 6 categories. Any comments on these?
Not in order, but equity among students across grade levels as a 3 seems, no offense, silly.
What is that? What is
Like,
that?
do we not treat our kindergartners as equal as our 6th graders? And is that a concern or a?
Does that mean resources, or is it like?
Well, I think it's probably something like, I would imagine that that would come into play when we're making decisions about programming or like making decisions about like, like the standards of the classrooms or some of the specials that they have access to.
Okay.
Like, again,
If you were upgrading one school, like the other.
Okay, so if we're upgrading just New Hartford and Bakerville, and then
Or just-
left
or just-
Angelini just
or
as
just-
is, that would not
Well,
be
just
equitable.
Bakerville, but not New Hartford, and you've got a very different experience across.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it could be equity between schools versus grade levels, but I don't know.
I think it would make more sense between schools versus grade level.
Well, then we're assuming, so I think.
Well, it would assume, and the same thing, I was thinking the transitions between buildings, student experience. There is no student experience between buildings currently, so that would make the assumption that there would be a transition.
that's probably not a right consideration for us.
I think, so this is probably more when we study, sometimes we're like, here's a pre-K through 1, there's so
And
many
then one's gonna
transitions
go
throughout their
into-
school, like,
Okay, got
and they say the less transitions, the better.
Got
Yeah, kind of thing.
Okay.
You guys only have 1 already, so you're either gonna have 1 or none, or I don't think we're gonna explore.
So I'm gonna move that from the matrix, the transitions between buildings, the student experience piece.
Although if the scenario was, again, some of these make assumptions, but if it was putting weight to moving an entire grade somewhere, that would be part of that line?
It could be, yeah.
Possibly, or
But
like,
it's changing where the transition is, really.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's still a transition somewhere.
okay.
right, and some of that, like the transition between buildings also, like maybe like you could imagine it touches on some parental concerns about having kindergartners in the same space as a 6th grader, if like things were going down that road. And so like, I know that some schools like would partition some of those grades, like have one big building, but like separate the schools within the grade. And then, it's about like, okay, they have to traverse from one end of the building all the way over to the other to get to gym, like what does that look like for which students and so on and so forth. Again, I'm just imagining a conversation that could take place from that, not necessarily saying that we would need to have those conversations.
Yeah, I guess I still don't understand why equity among students is still 3.
The 3, like, I would rather have a better program fit.
Yeah.
For all of us. I don't know.
This is, again, this
Yeah.
was just the sample that was provided, so like we can do that, so we can improve program fit to the 3. I would agree that that is like a pretty high, it should be a pretty high
That should be a
priority.
big one. And just seeing your pictures today and looking at just the way that the school and like, I think flexibility of future use is probably higher than a 2. Because you never know, I mean.
Yeah.
HVAC was never even a thought or consideration.
Open a window.
Like, yeah, right.
Yeah,
For sure.
I agree that I would put flexibility for future use as a 3. Like, we're really, for me, part of this is trying to figure out like the longest term solutions. Like, please let us not have this conversation again in 10 years that we'll move out of my house. But like, that kind of thing is something that we should really be prioritizing.
So the program fit a 3 and flexibility is a 3.
So, yeah. I'm gonna move this will be a 3, this will be a 3. That's what these are over here.
Flexibility and
I see it
program.
here.
So I'm just trying to leave it as comments so that I don't make all the revisions live and then I don't know what it was.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So transition between buildings, is that meant to be,
Sorry, Ben, could you speak up a little bit? My ears are bad tonight.
transition between buildings, is that meant to be students? Transitioning
I
or
think
people- or
we
teachers?
discussed striking that one altogether, unless anybody feels differently that we should keep it in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make.
I have that as strike
Yeah.
entirely. All right, equity among students across grade levels, so it sounds like we want to like downgrade that from a 3.
Eliminate it or make it a 1?
I
Well,
think you
that's a given for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think you either make it a 3 or you eliminate it.
Yeah.
If it's in here, it should be important, and I'm thinking back through, again, like New Hartford versus Bakerville became a big issue of who got a playground first.
Oh.
Like, maybe it's a stronger consideration, given that but maybe it's not about the grades. Because I don't think the grades is the issue.
Yeah.
It's more about equity
Among students.
among students.
Yeah.
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 But I don't want people to misinterpret that as like
Or
some
comparable.
DEI, like
Yeah.
that's not what this is about, it's making sure.
Right,
like,
it's stressing me out anytime I put equity on something.
I know,
Maybe among sites,
this is not what we're
Huh?
doing.
maybe among the buildings, equity among the buildings.
We could say
Or just
something around like,
comparable.
providing a
Yeah,
consistent,
consistent or comparable
Quality.
experience.
consistent quality of experience.
Consistent, yeah,
Take equitable out.
yeah.
Consistent quality.
I don't want demographics to come into it,
No.
because when you hear equity, you're like, oh.
Consistent quality of experience amongst students.
Yeah.
Everybody feel good about that
Yeah.
framing, okay.
Mhm.
Teacher collaboration by grade, instructional grouping,
I think that's good in it too.
yeah. It's like, it's hard for me, I feel like that's probably something that we're like suffering from right now.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
but I think too, given everything else above and beyond.
Well, yeah, I
like,
think,
we're working that out right
you know, program fit would tie into program
curriculum
fit,
alignment,
yeah.
which-
Yeah.
So leaving that at a 2, while the program fit weighs more.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And then same with resource sharing efficiency, again, like we all understand that this is an issue. It's certainly bigger than a 1, but it can't outweigh all the other stuff that goes into it. We'll likely still have some inefficiencies for a while. Go ahead, John.
So we're dropping 1 item here, right?
Right.
And so I was thinking about what was missing from this, and across the entire town, there's been a focus on the mission of the schools. And so something about kind of furthering the mission of the schools as mission statement of the schools.
I would. That program fit?
That's what I was just thinking.
Well, that's where it says curriculum alignment, the mission is much broader. And so that's where if we're taking 1 out and then also trying to keep a balance between the cost and the educational results,
I mean, the number of items that go into it.
the weighting
Like
of
line
Because, yeah, because
items.
you're really talking about the wellness of the student.
the whole
Weighted
piece.
in, which is part of your mission. It's not just about the curriculum.
Yeah, it's much broader. It's the
It's
overall
about the
mission of the schools and how
child.
these options, whatever they are, align with the overall mission. So it's like the highest
Well, if
level.
we're removing transition from buildings and put that,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So sorry, could you phrase that for me, because now I'm getting tired.
mission alignment?
Yeah, alignment with the mission alignment with the, NHPS mission.
That could be where in educational results.
It'll go there instead.
Yeah.
Keep that at a 2 or a 3.
It's the most important.
I give it a 3.
3, yeah.
So those first 3, so program fit, flexibility, and mission alignment would be 3s.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, 2s. Equity, well, no longer.
No longer
existent.
equity.
But
Consistent
former
quality
equity.
of experience.
Yeah.
Consistent quality of.
Experience among students.
All
That's
right,
a 3.
3. One more section, project results.
Safety, security, definitely 3.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Community improvements, I agree that that's a 1.
Yeah.
Accessibility, like,
So the computing improvements piece, is that the notion, I'm not sure where it fits in, like if we were, I guess maybe it's more the bottom one.
That's the bottom one, I think needs a bigger weight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Alternative use should be a 3,
yeah, but if we
I
were,
think.
so alternative uses, that ties into improving the community if we're thinking about community center or other
Yeah.
purposes, so.
But that's not our main goal here. Our main goal is for the students and.
Right, we're not gonna be able to decide what a school could be used for, like what. That's for other boards to determine, I believe,
Right.
but she's gonna help us narrow it down, what it could be used for.
Yeah.
But that's not something that we're gonna
A
be
scope
focused
within
on,
the utilization,
yeah. And people will wanna know what we're talking about, they're gonna wanna know that is part of a larger conversation.
So that would really be more of a, like, if we were to do this in 20 years down the line, kind of similar to the flexibility for future use is almost addressed within that.
so are we striking this then?
Or just leaving it as a 2.
We'll leave it at 2.
Sure.
Oh, right,
I do it.
I'm gonna make all of these adjustments that we discussed tonight, and then I will send it back out and you can. So there's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor. Does everybody want to accept this as amended as we discussed, or do you want to look at it before you sign off?
I'm good with it.
I will accept it as amended.
All right, let's take an official vote on a motion to adopt the, what do I have this called here, the options evaluation matrix as amended during tonight's meeting. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Don't you have to?
That is unanimous. Woo-hoo. All right, item 8, action steps. We will be back here on April 22nd, 2026 at 7 p.m. right here. Michelle will be walking us through a site analysis and preliminary options, all of the board. That will be the main topic of conversation for the evening. And we will go from there. And we'll be ready to narrow it down. Huh?
Should we make it early? Make it like 6?
No, I'm doing that before I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Stan, second by Carmen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 9:44. Thanks, everybody.
Chair burn away. You, the chair, wants to leave.
I think it was a very productive meeting, good job, people.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
And thanks for taking on the survey stuff, I think that can get done.
Yeah, no problem.
I know.
Yeah, we have a.
No?